Elizabeth is floored, demanding to know why the person behind her parents' fate can't be punished. But the official delivers a crushing blow. Her testimony against Uncle Ronald is the only thing they have. There's no physical proof. Her mind flashes back to the night before the incident. She vividly recalls seeing her uncle sneak toward the carriage with tools in his hands. She's absolutely certain he's the culprit, but her conviction means nothing. The official coldly informs her there's nothing they can do, leaving her completely powerless and alone. An official coldly tells Elizabeth to just follow the Senate's instructions. A lawyer sent by her uncle then spells out the deal. If she agrees to the marriage, an unimaginable fortune of 20 trillion florins will be hers. That's enough cash to fund the entire empire for 30 years. The sleazy lawyer even suggests that if marrying her uncle is too distasteful, he's still available. A jolt goes through Elizabeth. She realizes this is a trap, one wrong answer and be forced into an engagement. She tells him she needs more time. Elizabeth quietly asks for some time alone. Her mind flashes back 1 week, to the moment her world fell apart. Her parents were gone, having perished in a sudden carriage accident. An investigation revealed broken parts, proving it was no mere tragedy. She is certain her uncle Ronald was behind it, lashing out after being denied a business investment. But he has paid off everyone, so no one believes her story. To make matters worse, the family elders are now ordering her to marry him, a clear ploy to control the family fortune. Elizabeth finally understands the twisted family plot. The elders are in on it too, all to stop the family fortune from leaving their grasp. The idea of marrying the man responsible for her parents' fate is repulsive. Just as she's spiraling, her maid Asha checks on her. In that moment, Elizabeth realizes Asha is her only true ally. She asks her loyal friend for a serious favor, and Asha agrees without a second thought. Elizabeth then makes a shocking request. She wants Asha to get engaged to her. Confused, Asha reminds her they're both women. Elizabeth reveals her wild plan. She needs Asha to disguise herself as a man and act as her fiancé. She's absolutely determined not to marry the man she suspects is behind her parents' tragic end. But she refuses to let him get his hands on her family's fortune either. She declares that if she's forced to marry, she would rather go completely bankrupt. Asha sees the fire in her eyes and asks for the plan. Elizabeth explains the inheritance law gives her 1 year of control, and she's already hidden the family seal. The first step: a grand party to announce her fake engagement. Elizabeth lays out her master plan. Under the guise of an engagement trip, they will escape into the night. She vows to spend the entire year liquidating her family's fortune, leaving nothing behind. Not a single coin will go to her uncle or the elders. Seeing this as a way to get justice for her parents, Asha agrees to help. She asks how they'll keep the party a secret from Ronald. Elizabeth confidently produces a forged letter, explaining it will send her uncle on a 2-week trip, giving them the perfect chance to vanish. With her uncle safely out of the way for half a month, Elizabeth's grand plan kicks into gear. She throws a ridiculously lavish party, stunning the entire social circle. The guests are buzzing, completely caught off guard by her sudden engagement. While they whisper about the unexpected news and the sheer splendor of the event, Elizabeth is secretly thrilled. She had to pay triple the normal price to prepare everything in a rush, which is the perfect first step in her mission to go completely bankrupt and leave her greedy relatives with nothing. Asha's disguise is a massive success, leaving the party guests stunned by her handsome appearance. While they gossip, Elizabeth masterfully deflects their questions about her mysterious fiancé, claiming he's resting. She dives into the festivities, leading toasts and ensuring the celebration continues at full blast. Later, feeling the effects of the party, she stumbles away to collect herself, worried about her morning escape. Suddenly, a man's voice calls her name, saying he's found her. Elizabeth looks up in shock, coming face to face with an unknown but familiar-looking stranger. The man introduces himself as Dave, the Grand Duke of Fitzgerald, and he's completely baffled by all the fiancé talk. But Elizabeth is way too tipsy to care. She just stares at him, totally captivated. In her drunken haze, he looks exactly like her first love. Convinced this is her last shot at romance before she vanishes, she makes a bold move. She grabs the Grand Duke, pulling him close for a night that will change everything. The next morning, her simple plan to go bankrupt is about to get a whole lot more complicated. Elizabeth, completely lost in her drunken haze, pulls the Grand Duke into a passionate kiss. Dave is totally blindsided, trying to tell her to wait so they can talk. He points out how intoxicated she is and warns her that people might see them. But Elizabeth isn't listening to a single word. Ignoring the servants calling for her, she grabs his arm and leads him away. With surprising strength, she pushes him into the nearest empty room, the door creaking shut behind them, sealing their fate for the night. Inside the room, Elizabeth pulls the Grand Duke even closer, completely mesmerized. She whispers that his eyes look so much like her first love's. Dave is totally flustered by her forwardness and tries one last time to give her an out. He asks if she's serious, and if she's sure she won't regret this in the morning. With a confident smile, Elizabeth grabs his collar and declares she won't regret a thing. As the scene fades, It's clear her simple plan for ruin just got a whole lot more interesting. Swept up in her drunken fantasy, Elizabeth pulls the Grand Duke closer, whispering that he's the prince of her dreams. For her, this isn't a powerful noble, it's the spitting image of her first love. Dave, caught off guard by her boldness, offers her one last chance to back out, telling her she can change her mind at any time. But Elizabeth has no regrets. With her decision made, the night takes an irreversible turn, setting them on a complicated path that will change both of their plans forever. The next morning, Elizabeth wakes up with a pounding headache and a wave of instant regret. She rolls over, only to find a handsome stranger sleeping beside her. Her mind races, trying to piece together how he got there and why they're in such a compromising situation. Before she can fully process the shock, her maid Asha bursts into the room. Panic. Elizabeth quickly pulls her aside. When Asha asks who the mystery man is, a mortified Elizabeth admits she has absolutely no clue, deciding their only option is to escape before he wakes up. With the sun rising, Elizabeth knows they have to move fast, telling Asha that any delay will get them caught. When Asha worries about their luggage, Elizabeth reveals she's been one step ahead, having already loaded the carriage before last night's party even began. Dressed for the road and grabbing a pouch of valuables, she gives the signal. The two quickly slip out to the waiting carriage and speed away from the estate, leaving her old life and the sleeping stranger in the dust. Her grand plan for ruin is officially underway. The Grand Duke wakes up alone, reaching for the empty space beside him where Elizabeth used to be. Just as he realizes she's gone, his aide bursts into the room, relieved to have found his master after searching all night. He asks if the Duke met his fiancée, but stops short when he sees the compromising situation. Dave calmly buttons his shirt, telling him not to misunderstand. He explains Ingzedger's fiancée, but his expression shifts when the aide confirms the worst. Lady Knightley just fled the estate in a carriage. The aide clarifies that Elizabeth didn't with another man, but with her maid in disguise. Dave brushes off the confusing details, focused on one thing: she's gone. Without hesitation, he orders his aide to prepare the horses, determined to get answers himself. While waiting, he opens a small box, revealing 2 matching rings which he holds with a look of deep affection. The story then jumps back 10 years, showing the grim aftermath of a war where the previous Duke Fitzgerald had fallen in battle, leaving a heavy legacy behind. The flashback reveals Dave's grim history. His mother, the Duchess, met a tragic end when she was ambushed while doing charity work. This catastrophe forced a 16-year-old Dave to take on the heavy title of Duke, inheriting a failing territory and a war on the Eastern Front. Years later, his men cap traitor responsible for leaking his mother's location. The man begs for mercy, but Dave, now cold and resolute, orders a severe punishment, commanding that the man be locked away and questioned relentlessly until he reveals every last detail. The story rewinds, showing a young Duke Dave overwhelmed by his new responsibilities. He receives another bleak report about the Eastern Front's dwindling supplies. Annoyed, he complains that resources are always either stolen or looted, questioning if the other nobles even care. Just then, his aide delivers shocking news. A noble house has offered to send supplies for free. Dave scoffs at the seemingly foolish gesture, until he learns the benefactor is the House of Knightley, the only family to put their full support to him during that desperate time. One clear day, the boy and girl finally met. A young Elizabeth calls out to Dave, excitedly telling him to hurry over to the garden. Without waiting, she places a handmade flower crown on his head. He asks what it is, completely surprised. She proudly declares it's a gift, made from flowers only her family can grow. Elizabeth tells him he always looks lonely when he watches her from a distance. Then, with a bright smile, she makes a bold promise: when she grows up, she is going to marry him, leaving the young Duke speechless. Young Elizabeth holds Dave's hands, declaring that once they marry, he'll officially be family. With a massive grin, she tells the quiet boy he needs to smile more. The sweet memory of flowers fades as the scene snaps back to the present. Uncle Ronald sits across from a now adult Dave, casually suggesting he should marry Lady Ellie. Ronald then asks if Dave is hesitant because she's a bit on the wild side. Dave shoots up from his seat, completely flustered, and insists that is absolutely not the problem at all. Uncle Ronald calmly tells Dave he should accept the marriage. He reminds the Duke that 10 years have passed and Elizabeth has grown into a fine young lady. But Dave reveals he had his own plans. He was about to propose to Ellie right before her parents' sudden passing and her wild escape. Holding a ring box, Dave privately vows he can't give up on her. Meanwhile, Ellie is lost in his eyes, thinking he's the prince from her dreams. Seeing this, Dave realizes she hasn't forgotten him and resolves to uncover the truth himself. With newfound resolve, Dave strides forward, ready to make his move. But outside, the thunder of hooves suddenly cuts through the air. A rider frantically chases after Ellie's carriage, screaming for her to stop right there. Inside, Ellie and Asha realize they are being followed. Peeking out the window, Ellie struggles to see the pursuer's face but says they look familiar. She warns Asha they absolutely cannot stop. If the rider is familiar, it means they're from her family, and almost certainly sent by her scheming uncle to drag her back. Ellie asks Asha if she can shake their pursuer. Determined to escape, Asha promises to do her best and whips the reins, pushing the horses to go even faster. The man chasing them desperately screams for Lady Knightley to please stop, warning that it's dangerous. He shouts that there's a river just ahead, but his pleas go unheard. Before he can stop them, the carriage launches off the edge of a broken bridge. It soars through the air over the massive chasm, leaving their shocked pursuer stuck on the other side. The carriage lands roughly but safely on the far side, leaving their pursuer stuck behind the chasm. He watches in disbelief, muttering about how reckless a noble lady can be. Inside, Ellie cheers their wild escape and tells Asha to keep moving. Asha lays out the plan. They'll head to Hires, the biggest city around. Ellie's eyes sparkle with excitement. She declares they'll withdraw a massive fortune from her family's banks. Her mission is simple: hire guards, stay in the best hotels, and spend lavish on champagne and fireworks every night. Ellie wakes up dazed and confused, tied up in a pile of hay next to Asha. This was definitely not the luxurious hotel she had planned for her grand bankruptcy tour. Her confusion turns to rage as she demands to know what's happening. Asha quietly tells her to stay still, promising she'll find the right moment to get them out of this mess. A man then steps into view, and Ellie recognizes him. She confronts him, identifying him as the Merchant Guild leader and demanding he release them. But he just scoffs, revealing a dark energy as he declares he's no simple guild leader. The man scoffs at Ellie's accusation, proudly declaring that he's no merchant, but the leader of a bandit gang. Ellie and Asha look down, realizing with disgust that they were captured with a smelly fishing net. To prove his point, their captor flips over the Merchant Guild sign to reveal a shoddily painted bandits gang sign on the back. He nervously warns them to keep quiet if they want to live, but his attempt at intimidation falls flat. Ellie is completely unimpressed, wondering what is wrong with this city. While trying to eat, Ellie overhears a young boy she hired whisper about loan sharks. He explains the town bank is trapping citizens with impossibly high interest rates. Outraged, Ellie declares the practice is predatory and illegal. She presses him for details, and the boy reveals the bank is backed by a powerful noble family. He can't remember the complicated name, but says they're the wealthiest family in the empire. The horrifying realization hits Ellie. He's talking about her own family. The boy cheerfully confirms his payment, leaving Ellie and Asha speechless. Still reeling from the revelation, Ellie confirms with Asha that her family is behind the town's predatory bank. Asha explains that since the Senate controls bank affairs, this whole mess has to be Uncle Ronald's doing. Enraged, Ellie pictures his wicked grin and screams that he is going to pay dearly for this. A bandit guard storms in, telling the captives to keep quiet. But before he can react, Asha grabs a nearby wooden pole and, with a swift, powerful swing, knocks the man clean off his feet, turning the tables instantly. Before the bandit leader can react, Asha has him by the collar, shocking him with her incredible speed. Ellie steps forward with a fiery glint in her eyes. She scoffs at his plan to just raid the bank and burn some loan documents, asking if he seriously thinks that's enough. The man is completely baffled. Ellie pops down on a nearby chair and invites him to chat, revealing her motive. She wants to see the loan sharking bank manager who used her money go down. The bandit is speechless, demanding to know who she is. Asha proudly reveals her identity: Lady Elizabeth Knightley. Meanwhile, Grand Duke Dave and his aide are hot on Ellie's trail. The aide correctly deduces that Ellie and Asha are traveling light and will have to stop for supplies soon. He marvels at Ellie's absolutely wild escape plan, dressing her maid as a fiancé before launching their carriage off a cliff. The aide cheekily calls the remarkable woman Dave's fiancé, but Dave isn't focused on the praise. He calmly points out that a young boy has watched them from the shadows for quite some time. The aide dismounts, kindly asking the little boy if he's lost. Looking them over, the boy asks if they are knights before delivering an urgent message. He explains that a big sister was taken by bandits and sent him to find help. He describes her as a noble lady with long, flowing orange hair. The description hits them like a ton of bricks. Dave's friendly expression vanishes, replaced by a cold fury. His eyes glow with terrifying intensity as he demands to know exactly where the woman is being held. The door to the bandits' hideout is kicked clean off its hinges. Grand Duke Dave bursts in, shouting that he's there to rescue Elizabeth. He's clearly expecting a fight, but the thugs just stare at him, completely baffled. One of them angrily demands to know how he dares to interrupt them. Before Dave can react, the bandit leader points directly at the supposed victim and drops an absolute bombshell. He clarifies that this lady isn't their captive, she's their boss. Ellie just lounges in her chair, coolly enjoying a lollipop like she owns the place. Dave is completely stunned by the elation, unable to process the word leader. Ellie, looking like an absolute queen in her shades, simply points her drink at the intruders and gives a single command: kneel. To her utter amazement, both the powerful Grand Duke and his aide immediately drop to their knees. Now it's Ellie's turn to be confused. She suddenly recognizes them as the very same knights who pursued her from her estate and instantly suspects they must be working for her uncle. Ellie is seriously annoyed. Her original plan was simple: find a random knight and bribe them for help. But now, these guys are here. Suddenly, a light bulb goes off in her head. She realizes that if they are her family's knights, they have to follow her orders. Setting her drink down, she stands and whips off her sunglasses, locking eyes with them. She says she knows they're here to take her back. However, she pulls rank, declaring the deputy family head. She is exercising her rightful authority. The aide just stares, completely baffled. Before the confused aide can even process what's happening, Asha steps in to clear things up. She explains that the Knightley family's bank was involved in some shady business, taking advantage of innocent merchants. Ellie, as the deputy head, is simply here to recover the family funds and compensate the victims. The aide sputters, saying he heard she was taken by robbers. With a glare, Asha asks if he dares question his superior's word. The bandits quickly back her up, shouting that they've treated Ellie with total respect. Ellie confidently tells the knights they will help her. Ellie confidently asks if the knights will follow her plan. Without a second's hesitation, a completely charmed Dave agrees. Ellie is thrilled they're on board and has Asha hand him a paper detailing their mission: the Harace bank robbery. She smirks, revealing she's written a full script for their little performance. Later, Dave's aide is fuming, unable to believe the Grand Duke knelt for a lady. But Dave coolly asks what else he should do when his fiancée gives a command, reminding his aide that he was the one who taught him to always listen to his wife. The aide tries to talk sense into the Grand Duke, but Dave is completely lost in his own world. He sees Ellie's request as her officially recognizing him as her fiancé. The aide argues that as an imperial investigator, Dave could solve this problem legally. But Dave won't hear it. He says Ellie was too excited about her plan for him to ruin it. He's already changed into a robber's outfit, complete with a wicked-looking mace. He proudly declares he will pull off this robbery better than anyone for his fiancée. Lost in his own little world, Dave justifies this entire scheme as a noble quest for his fiancée. He rebrands the crime as a form of knighthood and declares his weapon a mace of justice, much to his aide's utter horror. Now fully dressed for the part, Dave dramatically kneels before Ellie. He declares it a great honor to carry out her command, swearing on his chivalry to make her plan a reality. But Ellie stops him. With a thoughtful expression, she apologizes and says he can't be the leader because he's just too handsome to be a convincing robber. With Dave deemed too handsome for the job, Ellie points to a flustered, green-haired knight, offering him the role of the robbery leader instead. A short while later, panic breaks out at the bank. An employee bursts into the manager's office, shouting that they're under attack. He explains the assailants are too strong, having taken down their mercenaries with ease. Outside, the nervous knight has completely transformed. Holding the mace high, he rallies a crowd, ordering them to capture the corrupt bank manager. The people cheer, ready to charge. As the charge begins, the crowd notices a new, powerful figure at the very front. Before anyone can react, Dave steps forward, unleashing a devastating wave of purple energy from his sword. The bank manager is sent flying across the room, completely overwhelmed. Trembling, he asks if Dave is the leader of this group. Shrouded in a dark aura, Dave coldly denies it, stating he wasn't chosen for the role. His true mission, he thinks to himself, is simply to prove his feelings for Ellie as he readies his final strike. With their mission a success, the newly named Harace bandits celebrate with a huge feast. The townsfolk praise their new heroes, recounting how the corrupt bank manager gave up the second he was cornered. One man gratefully declares they owe everything to their boss lady, Ellie and her knights. As the party rages on, Asha goes through the recovered loot. She explains it's not just stolen gold. She went through the ledgers and took back every coin the bank had unfairly taken from the merchants. Asha presents Ellie with a small pouch of gold, and Ellie is visibly disappointed. But Asha reveals her master plan. She converted the bulk of the fortune into state, guaranteed checks to avoid collapsing the bank. She whispers the grand total, and the number is so astronomical, 70 billion. It leaves Ellie completely stunned. Just as she's processing this, Dave approaches. Ellie asks why he isn't joining the feast. He coolly states that he can eat anytime. He's more interested in receiving his reward. With the bank job done, his thoughts turn dark, focusing on his next target, her wicked uncle. Dave grabs Ellie's arm, suggesting they find a quiet room to discuss his reward. Ellie's heart drops. This is the moment she's been dreading. But she has a plan: a super strong sleeping pill she got from a merchant. She'll just knock him out. Playing along, she leads him to a room and orders drinks. As she brings the tray over, Dave is sitting on the bed. He looks at her seriously and says he was honestly and genuinely moved by what she did for the townspeople today. Dave's genuine praise completely changes her perspective. A flashback hits, and she suddenly remembers just how handsome he was during their first meeting. A new, risky plan clicks into place. She'll use her charms to turn him against her uncle. Ellie puts on a flirty act, asking if he'd consider ditching Ronald and switching to her side instead. but her message gets totally lost in translation. He blushes and swears on his knighthood to hold the grandest wedding for her. The word, wedding, triggers a horrifying memory of her uncle, and Ellie realizes she's just made a massive mistake. Suddenly, a woman's scream creates a distraction. Ellie points at Dave, trying to cause a scene, but immediately plays it off as a mistake. Plan B, the drug drink. She offers it to him, but he says he isn't thirsty. Realizing it's do or die, she slams her own mug down, grabs him, and plants a kiss on him. Mid-kiss, it dawns on her that this isn't exactly new territory for them. But her bold move backfires. Dave easily takes control, a smirk playing on his lips as he declares he has no reason to resist her. Ellie is completely overwhelmed. She expected resistance, not for him to give in so easily. Her mind races. What about his loyalty to her uncle? This feels all wrong. But as he leans in, a vivid memory of their first night together surfaces. She struggles to recall how it felt, and then it hits her. A slow, confident smile spreads across her face as she realizes the truth. She didn't just go along with it that night. She actually liked it. This changes everything. The next morning, Ellie wakes up and is immediately stunned by the sight of Dave. She thinks he looks incredibly handsome up close, but then it hits her. It's more than that. He's the spitting image of her first love. This sends her spiraling, wondering what her old flame is doing and if he even remembers her. Meanwhile, news of her escape reaches her uncle. Ronald is absolutely furious, ranting to his associates that his reckless niece has run away, completely ignoring the elder's wishes for her to marry him. While Ronald rants about his runaway niece, he gets a visit from Eden Orvia, the crown prince himself. With a smug smile, the prince mentions hearing about the disastrous engagement party and how Ellie played everyone for fools before disappearing. He calls the whole situation a headache, but he's clearly enjoying the chaos. Later, Ronald complains to an elder about the prince. She asks if he managed to get rid of him, but Ronald insists that after a few meetings, the prince latched onto him like a dog with a bone. The crown prince smugly tells his father, the emperor, that Uncle Ronald probably expects the royal family to take his side. He cheekily reminds the emperor of their own family rule: always stay neutral and trust no one. But his father isn't playing games. He brushes off the comment and hands his son the household ledger. The prince's jaw drops when he sees the insane budget deficit. The emperor then reveals a massive state secret. The empire has been secretly draining its funds to keep up with a seemingly endless war. The emperor reveals the shocking truth to his son. The entire country is drowning in debt and heading straight for bankruptcy. He explains that greedy nobles, profiting from the endless war, are blocking any chance for peace. Placing the heavy burden on the prince, the emperor declares that the nation's future rests on his shoulders. Eden panics, questioning how he could ever find that kind of money. But the emperor has a solution. He reveals there is one person rich enough to solve their problem: Elizabeth Knightley, the wealthiest person on the entire continent. The emperor lays out the whole crazy story. Elizabeth dressed her maid up as a fiancé and vanished. He then gives his son a direct order: go find her and win her over. He declares that the moment she becomes his wife, all the empire's problems will disappear. Before the prince can even process this, his father points to a fully packed carriage. With a forceful shove, the emperor pushes his son into the vehicle, telling him not to come back empty-handed. As the carriage rumbles away, the prince is left screaming, completely lost on where to even begin his search. Meanwhile, the person they're looking for, Elizabeth, is busy putting her own genius plan into action. Despite being the heir to a fortune worth 30 years of the empire's budget, she's dressing in rags and smudging dirt on her face. Her maid, Asha, questions the idea, but Elizabeth is confident. She explains that looking rich makes them a target. By pretending to be broke, they can travel safely and throw off anyone chasing them. Speaking of pursuers, the crown prince is having a total meltdown after losing Elizabeth's trail because he fell asleep. Elizabeth explains to Asha that they'll have to travel through small villages like this for a couple of days. She confidently tells her not to worry, jingling some coins as proof. She figures no inn will turn them away as long as they can pay. But her plan immediately backfires. An innkeeper takes one look at their ragged clothes, calls them filthy vagrants, and slams the door in their faces. Thrown back into the street, a tearful Elizabeth complains that even beggars can be rich, just as a mysterious hand reaches out to comfort her. The mysterious hand belongs to a woman who introduces herself as Julia. She explains that she saw Elizabeth was in a tough spot and generously offers them a place to rest at her home. Elizabeth and Asha are treated to clean clothes and a warm meal, a kindness that almost brings tears to their eyes. However, Elizabeth's sharp intuition kicks in. She senses something is off about their host's demeanor. She asks Julia if some is wrong, and the woman's nervous flinch confirms her suspicions. This act of kindness might be a trap. Julia suddenly becomes flustered, apologizing for revealing personal matters to her guests. She explains that she was in a loving relationship, and their families were about to have a wedding. Thinking she's being supportive, Elizabeth congratulates her on the upcoming marriage. But Julia quickly corrects the assumption. With a pained expression, She clarifies that she isn't the one getting married. Instead, it's her stepsister who is about to marry the man Julia loves. The heartbreaking confession leaves Elizabeth completely stunned, realizing this wasn't a trap, but a genuine tragedy. The woman introduces herself as Julia Visconti, daughter of a major landlord family who controls the whole area. Elizabeth is stunned, asking if all the surrounding land really belongs to her family. Julia confirms they were nobles until her grandfather's time, which explains their influence. But the story takes a sad turn. She reveals that after her mother passed away, her father brought a new wife into their home. It was the beginning of a classic, tragic story involving a stepmother, which explains everything about Julia's current heartbreaking situation. Julia explains that her father remarried a woman who already had 2 older daughters. This new family was ruthless. Little by little, they stripped Julia of all her rights and inheritance in the household. The final, cruelest act came after her father passed away during a business trip. They threw her out of the main manor completely. Her stepfamily took the grand estate for themselves and forced Julia to move into this much smaller house instead. Elizabeth is completely floored by the story, realizing she's witnessing a real-life Cinderella tragedy. Julia recalls the painful memory of being cast out after her father was gone, left with absolutely no one on her side. But Elizabeth is skeptical, questioning why the lover Julia mentioned didn't step in to help her. Julia explains that his family was deeply indebted to hers, which left him completely powerless against her ruthless stepmother's commands. Despite this, Julia clings to one desperate hope, insisting he truly loved her. She declares with a trembling voice that if she just showed up at the wedding, she is certain he would choose her over her stepsister. Elizabeth asks a dangerous question: has Julia ever thought about getting revenge? She reminds the heartbroken girl that she is the true heir, not her stepsister. A spark of hope ignites in Julia, who admits she'd do anything to reclaim what's hers if she just had some backup. But that hope quickly dies. She reveals that her stepmother has already bribed all the local officials, leaving her completely powerless. Hearing this, a brilliant, chaotic idea forms in Elizabeth's mind. With a smirk, she declares her decision and orders Asha to arrange for the fastest carriage. With a mischievous spark in her eyes, Elizabeth points a finger in the air. She tells the shocked Julia that while she isn't a judge or an official, she has another idea. The scene shifts, and suddenly Elizabeth is radiating power in a stunning new gown. She looks less like a runaway and more like a queen ready to make things happen. With a brilliant smile, she asks the heartbroken girl a life-changing question: is she, perhaps, in need of a fairy godmother? Elizabeth is about to turn the Cinderella story completely upside down. Just as Elizabeth finalizes her chaotic plan, she's stopped dead in her tracks by a familiar face. It's Dave. She's completely stunned, demanding to know how he tracked her all the way here when she was certain she'd shaken him off. He calmly explains that when he woke up alone that morning, he knew she must have left in a hurry. Having no idea where she was going, he simply went to the biggest nearby city. There, he heard about a massive wedding at the castle and took a wild guess she'd be involved. Despite being flustered by his good looks, Elizabeth stands firm. She appreciates the gesture but calls him out, stating that her uncle clearly sent him, and she has no intention of going back home. Dave is taken aback, asking if she means Ronald Knightley before claiming it's all a misunderstanding. With a dramatic flair, he declares he isn't following anyone's orders. He's simply a prisoner of love, devoted only to her. Elizabeth is stunned by this wild confession, but quickly points out a flaw in his story. What about the knights who have been tailing them this whole time? Suddenly, a dark vision flashes through her mind. A knight, looking exactly like Dave, holds a blade to a man's throat, declaring that Elizabeth's enemy is his enemy. It's a clear act of betrayal against her uncle. Blushing furiously, Elizabeth asks if this is all because he loves her. Shaking off her confusion, she tries to shut him down. She insists that after the wedding, she's hiring her own guards and leaving, so he should just give up. But Dave has a simple counteroffer: he'll be her guard. When she questions his duty to his lord, he casually replies that they don't get along, so it's not a problem. Dave explains his lord sees him as a thorn in his side. It turns out Dave is from the only Duke's family in the Empire, creating a tense power struggle with the top brass. Elizabeth is totally stunned, never imagining she'd get caught up in such high-level political drama. He insists he has plenty of time and will make even more just to be her guard. She's flustered, but a flash of his impressive fighting skills comes to mind. He is definitely Twid, and she has to admit, he's really handsome too. Weighing her options, Elizabeth realizes having a powerful guy around would solve most of the problems that come with 2 women traveling alone. Plus, she can't deny he's incredibly handsome. Shaking off her distraction, she finally agrees to his offer. She tells Dave she needs to explain things to her companion and that they will officially set off after Julia's wedding. She jots down her hotel information for him, but as he takes the note, he has one simple question that stops her cold: who is Julia? Later that night, Elizabeth stares out at the bustling city, figuring all the lights must be for the upcoming wedding. As she sips her drink, Her mind drifts back to Dave. She's completely floored by how deathlessed with Julia's fake tragic story. He was genuinely outraged for her. For the first time, Elizabeth realizes she totally misjudged him. He wasn't her uncle's pawn, he might actually be a decent guy. Then a mortifying thought hits her, she never even asked for his name. She blushes, getting flustered by his sudden declaration. Elizabeth racks her brain, trying to remember Dave, but comes up with nothing. She figures there's no way she'd forget a face that handsome, even if she'd only seen him in passing. The thought that he might have fallen for her so quickly makes her blush furiously. She thinks his sudden interest is a bit intense, but then remembers a time when she was the one who boldly made the first move on her first love. This memory completely clashes with her dream of a pure, chivalrous romance, leaving her flustered and calling for Asha. A sudden rattling at the door startles Elizabeth. Before she can react, her foot slips on a stray piece of soap just as the door flies open. Dave rushes in, looking frantic, and yells that they have a huge problem. The Crown Prince is now in the city. The shocking news makes her lose her balance completely, and she pitches forward. Dave acts fast, catching her in a protective embrace. Overwhelmed and panicked, she looks up at him and blurts out her true desire. She doesn't want to get married, she just wants to go bankrupt. Still held securely in Dave's arms, Elizabeth is a total blushing mess. She stammers out an apology, trying to make an excuse for her fall. She quickly blames the doorknob, claiming it got stuck. Dave simply steadies her, saying it's okay and that he was just lucky to catch her. He says the important thing is that she isn't hurt. But as Elizabeth glances down, she notices her robe is a little too revealing after the tumble. She freezes up, completely flustered by their close proximity and the unexpected situation. Dave quickly turns away, his face beet red. He tells her that's enough, completely flustered of her state of undress. As he lets go, Elizabeth quickly gathers her robe, her own cheeks burning with embarrassment. The awkward moment hangs between them. Trying to change the subject back to the urgent problem, she looks up at him nervously. With a stammer, she asks why on earth His Highness, the Crown Prince, would show up in a remote city like this. His unexpected arrival could spell disaster for her escape plans. Still looking away like a total tomato, Dave spills the beans. He figures the only logical reason for the Crown Prince to be in a backwater city like this is for the wedding at the Lord's castle. Elizabeth's mind starts racing. A wedding organized by the royal family could make things way more complicated. As he explains that he came to warn her, he does something totally unexpected. He reaches forward and firmly tugs her robe closed, making sure she's properly covered. Ellie is completely stunned by his sudden, protective gesture. Dave admits the timing is super weird, but he needs to ask her something important. Elizabeth is completely caught off guard. He brings up their night together back in Harria's, explaining that she said something to him while he was asleep. He couldn't quite hear it, but the memory has been bugging him ever since. Taking her arm, his gaze intensifies. Elizabeth's heart nearly stops. She remembers that day perfectly. She thought she had confessed her feelings to him. As she turns beet red, he asks her to finally tell him what she said. Dave's serious expression returns. He explains it wasn't just sleep that kept him from hearing her. It was because her words made him feel awful about himself. He desperately needs to know what she really said. Completely cornered, Elizabeth just stammers, her face bright red. She can't bring herself to confess. Seeing her panic, Dave's demeanor softens. He gently cups her cheek and tells her it's okay. He won't ask her to repeat her words from that night. Instead, he announces he has a completely different question for her. Instead of grilling her about the past, Dave asks a completely different question, his face blushing. He softly asks if he can kiss her. He explains that she has always been the one to take the lead, but this time, he wants to be first. Without waiting for a reply, he leans in and closes the gap between them. Completely swept away, Ellie's heart pounds in her chest. She rises onto her toes, fully giving in to the long, awaited moment as he finally takes charge. As their lips meet, the world around them melts away into a dreamy haze of flowers. Ellie feels like she's floating, completely lost in the moment she's been waiting for. But the perfect scene shatters in an instant. Suddenly, Dave goes limp and slumps forward without a word. Before Elizabeth can even process what's happening, a hand shoots out from the darkness and clamps down hard over her mouth, silencing her scream. The romantic dream has just turned into an absolute nightmare. The nightmare scenario vanishes in a flash. Suddenly, Dave is the one holding Elizabeth, who has gone completely limp in his arms. He looks down at her with an intense gaze, telling her she'll get hurt and that he's taking her to the bed. With no hesitation, he carries her over. Taking complete charge, he rips his shirt open, his expression fierce. The scene quickly shifts, finding them locked in a passionate embrace. Whatever happens next, it's clear their relationship is crossing a major line and becoming far more intimate than ever before. The morning after their passionate night, Dave holds a sleeping Ellie close, gently whispering her name. A new, undeniable intimacy now exists between them, changing the dynamic of their entire adventure. The tender moment fades as the day moves on. Later, Ellie is dressed in an elegant gown when a message arrives for her. Holding the formal paper, her eyes widen in surprise as she questions what it could be. Looking down at the crisp envelope, she wonders aloud if she has received an invitation. An employee informs Ellie that the other ladies already left for the feudal lord's castle last night. It seems the flashy clothing shop owner ratted them out, which explains the sudden invitation. Dave asks what she plans to do now. Resolute, Ellie declares that if Ash is waiting there for her, she will accept the invitation to go. Hearing her decision, Dave's mood shifts instant. In one swift motion, he pulls her into a firm embrace, wrapping his arms securely around her waist. His possessive grip makes it clear he won't let her go alone. With a confident smirk, Dave announces that he will escort her personally. He won't let her face this alone. They soon arrive at the massive and imposing feudal lord's castle, ready to confront whatever awaits them. But their grand entrance is immediately cut short by a furious shout. It's none other than Uncle Ronald, who can't believe his eyes. Livid, he demands to know how Ellie dares to show her face in his presence after everything she has done. Her escape plan just hit a major, very angry roadblock. Before Ellie can even respond to her uncle, a new commotion interrupts them. Startled, she wonders what all the noise is about. A maid suddenly appears, gesturing for Ellie to follow her. Separated from Dave, Ellie is led into another room where an angry noblewoman demands to know what she thinks she's doing. The situation gets weirder when another lady tells her own future son-in-law to stay out of it. When Dave tries to intervene, a guard blocks his way, telling the young master to step aside. Ellie is now trapped in someone else's family drama. The family drama suddenly gets a new player. A man is held back by guards, desperately shouting the name, Julia. The furious noblewoman shifts her glare to this newcomer, demanding to know how she dares to be here. But Julia stands her ground, dropping a total bombshell on everyone. She boldly declares that this is her lover's house and the prestigious invitation was originally meant for her, not anyone else. Ellie is stuck watching this intense soap opera unfold, completely bewildered by the chaos she's walked into. The furious noblewoman scoffs, waving the red invitation triumphantly. With a vicious glare, she accuses Julia of pretending to be innocent after all this time. The lady sneers, guessing Julia must have had some money hidden away somewhere. She then delivers a final, crushing blow, calling Julia a parasite who doesn't even know her place. Julia flinches, clearly hurt by the harsh words. Before the noblewoman can continue her tirade, a new voice cuts in, declaring that she has gone too far as someone steps forward to intervene. The drama gets a new duo as Ellie and Dave make their entrance. The furious noblewoman's attention snaps to them, and she sneers at Julia, asking where she found yet another handsome man. The lady then spreads vicious rumors, accusing Julia of being the type of shameless woman who would pursue her own sister's partner. As Julia panics and denies any connection, Ellie steps forward. She calmly gets the noblewoman's attention, preparing to shut down the entire spectacle herself. The whole room waits to see what she'll do next. Tired of the spectacle, Ellie finally decides to take charge. She turns to Dave, calmly informing him that it's time for a little girl talk. With a steady gaze, she asks him to give her and the noblewoman some privacy. Dave hesitates for a split second, caught off guard by her confidence, but he quickly understands and agrees to step aside. Watching Ellie take control, the furious noblewoman scoffs, crossing her arms and suggesting they should all just leave it at that. But it's way too late for that now. Ellie steps in with her arms crossed, telling the furious noblewoman she's being way too harsh on her family. The lady's attention snaps over to Asha, dismissively asking who this little thing is. Before the nervous Julia can even answer, Ellie lets out a confident grin. She remarks that she'd heard how ridiculous this group was, but seeing them in person is something else entirely. The noblewoman is completely stunned by this comeback. Ellie knows talking to people like this is like hitting a brick wall, as the bullies fume in confusion. Ellie shuts the noblewoman down by flashing an official, wax-sealed invitation. She declares that she's also a guest here and, more importantly, she owes Julia a favor. With a flashy wave of her jeweled hand, Ellie explains she already paid for her room with a dress, so she just needs to cover a few meals. Then, her smile turns sharp. She heard the noblewoman's family put Julia's into debt and ruined her engagement. With ultimate confidence, Ellie offers to pay off the entire, trifling sum, and asks for the price. The noblewoman can't believe her ears, scoffing that the trifling sum is actually a massive 7 million florins. Furious, she demands to know exactly who this girl is and what family she comes from to be so arrogant. But before Ellie even has to say a word, a voice makes a grand announcement. This is Lady Elizabeth Knightley, the heiress to the esteemed House of Knightley. The bully freezes, the name echoing in her head. She just realized she picked a fight with the wealthiest person in the entire empire. The bully's mind is completely blown. She finally connects the dots. Knightley is the wealthiest family on the entire continent. Without missing a beat, Ellie presents a check for a cool 10 million florins. With a smug grin, she asks if they'll take the money and leave, or if they want to keep causing trouble. Stuttering, the noblewoman tries to save face, insisting it was never about money. She makes a lame excuse about wedding preparations and quickly scrambles away with her friends, yelling a hasty goodbye to Julia. As the bullies stand there, completely stunned, Ellie watches them with a smirk. She internally notes that she expected them to just snatch the money and run, but they have more backbone than she thought. A moment later, a man rushes to Julia's side, asking if she's okay. Still in awe, Julia takes his hand and turns to Ellie, admitting she's far more impressive than she ever imagined. A little embarrassed by the praise, Ellie just laughs it off. She apologizes for losing her temper, saying she couldn't stand by and watch Julia get treated so badly. Ellie modestly brushes off the praise, explaining that she isn't really that impressive since all her wealth was inherited. But Julia is still in awe, thinking that if she were in the same situation, she would have been too scared to say a single word. Ellie changes the subject, asking if Julia is alright. She points out that Julia's stepmother and sisters seem determined to go through with the wedding, even after the 10 million florins. Seeing Julia's worried expression, Ellie gently places a hand on her shoulder for support. As Ellie offers her support, placing a reassuring hand on Julia's shoulder, she tells Julia that Miss Elizabeth is the kind of person who always gets things done. With a determined look, Asha promises that if Julia truly wants to fight back against her family, Ellie will be there to help her until the very end. She then cuts straight to the heart of the matter, asking Julia to tell them what she really wants. Julia looks completely stunned, as if this is the first time anyone has ever given her a choice. Taking a deep breath, Julia clutches her necklace, finally ready to make a choice for herself. She tells the others that she has a shameless request to make, her voice filled with hesitation. But before she can even finish her sentence, Ellie's face lights up with a massive, confident grin. Without a shred of doubt, Ellie cuts her off with an enthusiastic course. She is clearly ready to jump headfirst into whatever chaos Julia is about to suggest, and she couldn't be more excited about it. Ellie beams, giving Julia a few reassuring pats on the shoulder and telling her to just leave everything to her. While Asha watches with a knowing smile, Julia is still stunned by this whirlwind of support. It seems Ellie's plan is already in motion, because the scene immediately cuts to the wedding hall. An officiant stands at the pulpit, beginning the ceremony by welcoming all the esteemed guests. The stage is set for some serious drama, and Ellie is clearly the director of this chaotic show. At the altar, the bride Julia sincerely thanks all her guests for coming. The officiant then begins the ceremony, making special note of the important people in attendance. He honors the presence of the crown prince and then casually adds another name to the list: Grand Duke Fitzgerald. The moment the name is spoken, Ellie's world comes to a screeching halt. She freezes in place, completely stunned. The mysterious man she shared that one night with, the one who's been following her adventure, is a powerful Grand Duke. She had absolutely no idea. Ellie's mind completely shorts out. Grand Duke Fitzgerald. That's Dave's title. The same Dave who was supposed to be fighting a war, the very one who hadn't visited her in 8 long years. Her sudden stiffness doesn't go unnoticed. Asha gently touches her arm, asking if she's okay. Snapping out of her daze, Ellie starts scanning the crowd. She wonders what her first love even looks like after all this time, totally unaware that he's the same mysterious man who's been following her this whole time. With the crown prince's approval, the ceremony begins. As Julia walks toward the altar, she leans in to whisper to her nervous groom. She asks why he looks so unhappy on their joyous day, telling him he should smile. But her own smile twists into a deeply unsettling grin, causing the groom to flinch in terror. The priest moves on, asking if anyone objects to the marriage. On cue, a noblewoman smirks behind her fan. Just then, Ellie leaps to her feet, dramatically shouting that she objects to the union. Chaos erupts as a guest shouts that the bride has been switched. The entire hall breaks into confused murmurs. Stepping forward, Ellie makes a bold declaration. She announces that she is the groom's true partner and the rightful heir of the Visconti family. As the guests question who the woman at the altar could possibly be, Ellie presents her ultimate proof. She holds up the Visconti family's signet ring, a golden emblem hanging from her neck, making her claim absolutely undeniable to everyone in the room. Ellie drops another bombshell, declaring the bride is her stepsister with no blood ties to the Visconti family. She reveals that after her father passed, her greedy stepmother stole both her inheritance and her betrothal. The crowd erupts in whispers. This entire wedding is a scam. The groom stares in disbelief before suddenly rushing past the fake bride at the altar. He sweeps Ellie into a tight embrace, leaving the priest and all the guests completely speechless. The entire ceremony has been derailed in the most dramatic way possible. With the ceremony in ruins, Ellie's uncle cuts through the chaos with a slick smile. He argues that since the banquet is ready, they should just proceed. The original groom suddenly agrees, telling the priest they'll just switch the bride. He's already holding a different woman in a white dress. The uncle then puts the Grand Duke on the spot, asking for his opinion. Ellie freezes, stunned to see Dave there. In a shocking twist, Dave calmly agrees with the plan, leaving Ellie completely blindsided as her uncle's rates the unexpected support. The priest asks the new couple for their opinion. In a stunning reversal, the groom lets go of Ellie and rushes back to the original bride at the altar. He pulls the woman, Julia, into a deep embrace right in front of everyone. Ellie watches in total shock, completely humiliated as she realizes her entire assumption was wrong. The Grand Duke looks on with a knowing smirk, hinting that the groom isn't who he seems. With the switch complete, the priest announces the wedding will proceed with Julia Visconti, turning Ellie's triumphant entrance into a disaster. With the drama finally over, the wedding continues as the furious stepmother and her daughter are dragged away protesting. Ellie watches the whole thing in a daze, barely even noticing as the real happy couple shares a kiss. The crowd erupts as and even Grand Duke Dave claps, along with a calm expression. Utterly exhausted by the turn of events, Ellie retreats to a guest room and collapses. Her mind flashes back to a handsome man she once met, and she suddenly realizes with a shock he looks just like Dave. Alone in the guest room, Ellie reflects on what could have been. She realizes that if her father were alive, she and Grand Duke Dave would almost certainly be engaged. But she knows the greedy Senate, obsessed with her family's wealth, would never approve the match now. Getting involved in inheritance drama would only bring disgrace to his noble house. A fond memory of her childhood crushed surfaces, but she accepts that who she is now can't be with him. A knock at the door cuts through her thoughts, revealing a maid with a note from Dave himself. The scene flashes back, revealing a glimpse into Grand Duke Dave's past. At every high society event, noble ladies would whisper and gather around him. But for Dave, it was always the same tiresome routine. He recalls the endless parade of women trying to get his attention, all while he looked on with a completely bored expression. He internally sighs, thinking about how they always meet in stuffy, formal places like this. Even back then, it was clear the Grand Duke had no interest in playing these social games. A silver-haired man confronts Dave with a smug grin, questioning his informal tone towards the son of his lord. Dave is clearly not amused by the provocation. The man waves it off, reminding Dave they're cousins and don't need formalities. But an intense flash of a lion facing off against a cunning snake reveals the true power dynamic between their families. The cousin then casually admits his own actions were rude, vaguely calling it a form of identity theft. He grabs a drink, leaving Dave really stunned by his audacity. The silver-haired cousin excuses himself with a slick smile, saying someone is waiting for him. Just then, a door bursts open and Ellie rushes out, calling for Dave with a panicked look on her face. She has something urgent to tell him but stops dead in her tracks. The man turns, calmly stating he figured his childhood friend would show up. Ellie's eyes widen in shock as she immediately bows low. It seems Dave's cousin isn't just a cousin. He's the crown prince of the empire. The crown prince puts on an act, apologizing for being in the wrong room. But Ellie stops him, confirming he's exactly where he's supposed to be. Things get twisted when he casually claims that the invitation card she's holding was sent by him. Ellie is completely baffled. He explains that requesting a private audience in his own name would have caused a huge political scene. To speak with Lady Knightley. Unofficially, he had to use a different name. The realization hits Ellie she didn't summon anyone, she was summoned by royalty. Ellie's mind races with confusion. She's never even met the crown prince, so why would he summon her now? Royalty doesn't just show up for a provincial noble's wedding. The prince, sensing her tension, tells her there's no need to be so wary. He sits down, promising not to come any closer and invites her to take a seat. Ellie remains frozen, completely overwhelmed by the situation. He acknowledges her discomfort, then brings up the tragic passing of her parents. Suddenly, this meeting feels less like a chat and more like a calculated move in a game of chess. The crown prince gets straight to the point. He brings up her parents' carriage incident, reminding her that the official story was just faulty parts. But then he drops a bomb, pointing out that Ellie herself claimed to have seen someone tampering with it. He calmly moves a chess piece, explaining that sometimes old cases must be reopened. In doing so, he warns, new evidence can suddenly appear. Ellie is floored. She asks if he seriously came all this way just for her. The prince simply gives her a knowing smirk. The crown prince drops another bomb. He reveals that her dear Uncle Ronald came crawling to him right after she fled, bad-mouthing his foolish niece. But the prince isn't on the uncle's side. He tells Ellie she is the rightful heir. Then, with a slick smile, he proposes a political alliance. Ellie is baffled. As a woman, she can't inherit a title to make that happen. He clarifies that there is one way. If she were connected to the imperial family by marriage, the investigation into her parents' passing would be reopened with extreme prejudice. The crown prince dangles the ultimate bait. He explains that if the case is reopened, new evidence will almost certainly surface, linking her Uncle Ronald directly to the incident. With a sly grin, he makes his stunning proposal the position of crown princess. Marry him, and she can secure her inheritance and get justice for her family. Ellie is frozen. Meanwhile, at the Fitzgerald estate, Dave calmly sips his drink. A servant bursts in, urgently calling out to, "Your Highness." with news about Elizabeth's lady-in-waiting, causing the Grand Duke to nearly choke. Asha bursts in, confronting the man and demanding to know where her lady is. She lays into him, furious that he caused confusion by not properly identifying himself, and then summoned Ellie without telling her attendants. The man tries to explain that there's been a misunderstanding, grabbing her arm to stop her rant. But then he drops a bombshell, asking why she thinks he sent for Ellie. He states clearly that he never sent any message. Asha freezes. If it wasn't him who called for Elizabeth, then who was it? They both realize she might have walked right into a trap. With a smug grin, the Crown Prince, Eden Orvia, announces that someone is waiting for him and smoothly excuses himself. He turns, revealing he was speaking to none other than Dave. The Grand Duke is absolutely livid. His face twists into a mask of pure rage as he clenches his fist, the sound of him grinding his teeth filling the silence. The prince's meddling with Elizabeth has clearly pushed Dave over the edge, and he looks ready to explode. The tense standoff is shattered as the door suddenly flies open. Elizabeth jumps, startled by the noise. A moment later, Dave and Asha burst into the room, their expressions a mix of panic and fury. They both scream her name, their voices echoing with desperation. Before Ellie can process what's happening, Dave is right in front of her, his hands gripping her shoulders. He looks down at her, his voice tight with emotion, and declares that he's been looking all over for her, leaving her totally stunk. Ignoring Elizabeth's shock, Dave pulls her behind him and declares he needs to have a word with the prince. In a blur of motion, he grabs the royal by his collar, his expression absolutely lethal. He snarls that the only thing stopping him from challenging the prince to a duel is his responsibility to his people under the king's authority. Leaning in, Dave delivers a chilling warning to never use his name to summon Elizabeth again. He then shoves the prince with force, sending the man stumbling backward onto the floor. With the prince still on the floor, Asha steps protectively behind a nervous Elizabeth. But before she can intervene, Dave makes his move. He smoothly places a hand on Ellie's waist and tells the room to excuse him. Looking directly at Asha, he announces he'll be taking Elizabeth for a bit. In one fluid motion, he scoops the utterly shocked Ellie into his arms. Without another word, he carries her straight out of the room, leaving a stunned Asha and the defeated prince staring after them in disbelief. Without missing a beat, Dave strides purposefully down the long, empty palace hallway, carrying a bewildered Elizabeth in his arms. Still processing the absolute chaos of the last few minutes, she is completely flustered. Looking up at his serious expression, her mind races to find the right words for this insane situation. She manages to get his name out, trying to question him, but trails off, too stunned to form a coherent thought. He simply continues on his path, leaving her speechless in his stronghold. Dave finally stops, setting Elizabeth down on a secluded palace balcony. Instead of letting go, he pulls her a shockingly close embrace, dipping her back slightly. Elizabeth's mind goes completely blank, her face burning red as he leans in until their lips are almost touching. With a smirk, he murmurs that he noticed she stopped calling him "sir" anymore. His bold observation leaves her totally speechless as he gently tucks her hair behind her ear, his touch making her heart pound in her chest. Still holding her close, Dave drops a bombshell. He leans in and asks if she finally remembers who he is. Completely flustered, Elizabeth questions when he figured it out. With a confident smirk, he reveals he has known since the very beginning, all the way back at Julia's wedding. He explains that the moment she heard his name, her shocked expression gave everything away. He's been fully aware that she recognized him this entire time, letting her think she had the upper hand. Elizabeth's mind flashes back to that chaotic society party. She realizes now that he knew from the very beginning. Thinking back, things were so hectic that she never even got the chance to introduce herself. In the present, her face burns bright red with embarrassment as the full weight of the situation sinks in. Dave gently touches her face, his touch making her gasp. He leans in, his voice a low whisper as he asks if it has really been 8 long years since they last saw each other. The revelation is too much for Elizabeth to handle. The memories, the lies, and the current danger all crash down on her at once. Completely overwhelmed, she suddenly surges forward, wrapping her arms around Dave in a tight, desperate embrace. He's taken by surprise, softly saying her name as she buries her face in his chest. Trembling, she begs him to take her anywhere. All that matters is that they get out of here, right now. A gentle, understanding look crosses his face as he holds her close. Without a word, Dave honors her desperate plea, whisking Elizabeth away in his arms. They leap from the high balcony, the city lights blurring into a golden streak below them. In an instant, they land safely a lavish, unfamiliar room, far from the chaos of the party. He murmurs that the night air was getting chilly. Before she can fully process their escape, he gently pushes her back against a wall. He leans in, pulling her into a deep and passionate kiss that leaves her breathless, solidifying a bond that started 8 years ago. As the night deepens, Elizabeth's thoughts drift back to their shared past. It had been 8 long years since they were torn apart. Their innocent first love was crushed by the heavy weight of his duties, the kingdom's instability, and messy politics. Lying there with him now, she can barely believe it's real. He holds her close, softly calling her by her old nickname, Elize. In that moment, she feels a sense of certainty. Whatever happened before, fate had decided to reunite them, and the years of separation finally melted away. The next morning, the 8 years of painful separation finally melt away. Lying together, Elizabeth admits her deepest fear. She thought he had forgotten her after not receiving a single letter. But Dave quickly puts her worries to rest. He explains that he was constantly fighting on the chaotic, war-torn borderlands. It was a place no messenger could reach. He assures her that she never once faded from his mind. In fact, he confesses the dream of one day seeing her again was the only thing that got him through every difficult battle. Dave pulls her closer, confessing that she was his salvation. The one thing that kept him going through the war. Their shared moment seals the promise of a new beginning, washing away the years of heartache. But while they reconnect, a different drama unfolds elsewhere. In a private chamber, Uncle Ronald is crumpled on the floor, his scheme in shambles. Elizabeth's loyal maid, Asha, stands over him with an icy stare. She coolly asks if he was waiting for has really gone, confirming his plans have just gone up in smoke. Meanwhile, a high-ranking official finds the situation deeply troubling, recognizing the kingdom's fate hangs in the balance. His reports claimed Elizabeth and the Grand Duke were just childhood friends, but he suspects there's more to it. He recalls a chilling memory of the usually stone-hearted Dave grabbing him by the collar, his face twisted with rage. Realizing he's underestimated the Duke's feelings, the official braces himself for a complicated mess. Right on cue, his office door is kicked open with a powerful bang as an imposing figure steps into the room. The official who just had his door kicked in looks up from the floor, recognizing the intruder. He asks if she's Lady Knightley's maidservant, but she sets him straight immediately. She introduces herself as Asha Morton. The name instantly clicks for the official, who connects her to the legendary knight, Clovis Morton. With a flicker of pain in her eyes, Asha confirms that she is indeed the famous warrior's daughter. Getting back on his feet, the man coldly asks why she's blocking his path and demands to know her business. Without wasting a moment, Asha gets straight to the point. With unwavering loyalty, she demands to know if the man in front of her was the one who used Duke Fitzgerald's name to lure Elizabeth into a trap. The official, who is none other than the Crown Prince, looks down on her with a smirk. He internally scoffs at her display, seeing it as a knight's daughter, just playing pretend. To his cynical mind, the kind of fierce loyalty she shows is nothing more than a romantic fantasy, found only in old ballads. The Crown Prince internally dismisses Asha's fierce attitude. He believes that people in her position are all the same, just playing the loyal servant to climb the social ladder. In his mind, she's just a typical opportunist looking for a promotion. Deciding her act is getting tedious, he cuts straight to the point. With a smug grin, he confesses that yes, he was the one who set the trap. He then looks down on Asha, mockingly asking what a mere maid could possibly do to stop him. Furious, Asha demands the prince explain his actions. He just scoffs, confident he knows how to handle her type. With a slimy smile, he asks what other reason a man could have for inviting a lady to a private meeting. The disgusting suggestion makes Asha flinch. The prince then reveals his true motive. He finds Elizabeth captivating and beautiful, but what he's really after is her staggering fortune. He wants her money, and he'll do anything to get it. The prince continues his slimy monologue, admitting that while Elizabeth isn't a high-ranking noble, her massive fortune is more than enough to tempt any man. He asks Asha if she agrees, smugly believing he's made his point clear. For a second, Asha considers just leaving. She knows that challenging royalty is a dangerous game. She calmly tells him she'll be on her way, but just as the prince's grin widens in victory, Asha suddenly spins around and lands a thunderous kick, sending the entitled hair flying across the room in a heap. The crown prince hits the floor, completely stunned. He stammers in disbelief, unable to con that a mere maid just laid him out. But Asha stands over him, her expression ice, cold and furious. She reminds him that even a simple knight is well versed in imperial law. With a dangerous edge to her voice, she asks a pointed question. Isn't insulting royalty a crime punishable by the most severe penalty? The prince is oshless as Asha uses his own royal status against him, and for once, he has no comeback. Before the prince can even process her words, Asha's hand whips across his face with a loud crack. The entitled royal stumbles backward, completely stunned as he clutches his now bright red cheek. Looking down at the heap on the floor, Asha scoffs, completely unfazed. She reminds him that even a knight's son should know the laws of the empire. With a dangerous glint in her eyes, she asks if he's forgotten that disrespecting the imperial family is a crime punishable by the most severe consequence, turning his own status against him. The prince actually smirks from the floor, calling this a surprisingly good outcome. He points out that if he were to permanently remove her from the picture, Elizabeth would never want to become the crown princess. He asks Asha if she truly doesn't value her own life, but she answers with a cold, "I do not." 10 years ago, She was an orphan with nothing until Elizabeth's father took her in. To Asha, repaying that monumental kindness, even if it costs her everything, would be a genuine relief, leaving the prince stunned by her devotion. The prince is completely thrown off by Asha's intense loyalty. He can't wrap his head around why anyone would be so willing to sacrifice themselves. For a moment, he's actually flustered, blushing at her unwavering sense of duty. But Asha isn't fazed by his reaction. She coldly orders for the knights to be summoned. The prince regains his composure, reminding her that striking a royal is a crime with no trial. Then, an attendant addresses Asha as, "Your Highness." But the prince just shakes his head, refusing to fall for such a trick. The prince, completely flustered, tries to regain his authority. He tells Asha that he has his own urgent matters, claiming he's following an imperial decree with the empire's fate at stake. He grabs her, announcing he'll let her insolence slide just this once for the sake of their marriage. Unimpressed, Asha simply turns and walks away without a second glance. The prince is left stunned and red-faced, muttering to himself that she must be a raving lunatic who isn't in her right mind at all. A grateful couple stands before their grand estate, thanking Elizabeth for everything she's done. The man explains that because of her, they can now legally reclaim their family's properties through litigation. Bowing deeply, they promise to never forget her kindness. Elizabeth simply smiles, dismissing their thanks by saying it was justice, as they were the ones who helped her first. After the couple waves a happy goodbye, Dave remarks that it's a wonderful outcome. He then turns to Elizabeth with a smirk, suddenly asking where she's actually heading, admitting he never thought to ask. Dave correctly guesses that Elizabeth has no plans to return to the capital. Seeing her hesitation, he makes his move, declaring that if he thought she was interested, he would take her to his duchy and marry her immediately. He gets flustered, promising a proper proposal with a ring and a grand party. But Elizabeth flatly rejects him, leaving Dave completely stunned. She quickly clarifies that her refusal has nothing to do with her feelings for him. She then pulls out a newspaper article exposing her escape, revealing the real reason her parents' passing was no mere accident. Elizabeth drops a bombshell. She accuses her own uncle, Ronald Knightley, of orchestrating the tragic carriage incident that took her parents away. Now, he's using the family council to pressure her into an unthinkable marriage. That's the real reason she ran. Dave listens intently, his expression turning serious. He clenches his fist, understanding the legal trap she's in. A noblewoman needs family permission to marry. But just as despair sets in, a confident grin spreads across his face. He assures her it's no problem, promising they'll find a way while buying more time. Dave gently holds Elizabeth's face, admitting it's a shame he can't make her his wife immediately. He then asks accept him as her escort, just like she promised. After a moment of intense quiet, he leans in and closes the distance between them. But just as their lips meet, their romantic escape is cut short. Asha comes running towards them with a frantic warning. She yells that the Knightley family's pursuers have found them, and they need to leave right away. Their brief moment of peace is over. Asha stops dead in her tracks, stunned by the intimate scene she just interrupted. The romantic atmosphere shatters instantly as Elizabeth's face flushes bright red with embarrassment. Seeing their reaction, Asha awkwardly asks if she should come back later, despite the urgent danger. Mortified, Elizabeth yells that there's absolutely no time for that, and they need to leave immediately. With their pursuers closing in, the trio scrambles to make their hasty getaway, the failed kiss forgotten in the sudden chaos of their escape. The group finally steps into a bustling city. Elizabeth stretches dramatically, shouting that they've finally arrived after 3 long days of travel. As they walk through the streets, Asha reflects on just how impressive Dave is. It turns out, he's not just a good fighter. He even managed to shake off the crown prince's carriage that was secretly following them the entire time, leaving the furious royal completely outmaneuvered and fuming in their dust. Dave's skills are proving to be more valuable than anyone expected. As soon as they stop, Elizabeth starts complaining. The carriage ride was so fast and bumpy that she thought she was going to be sick. While she's recovering, Dave shows up looking totally unfazed, their bags in hand. He tells them he's already dropped the carriage off for repairs. But then he gets serious, asking why she picked this random military town of all places. He cuts right to the chase, confirming if her master plan is still to bankrupt her entire family. This guy really doesn't beat around the bush. Elizabeth reveals her reasoning. She admits she could have dropped a few bags of gold at the last city's festival, but running for their lives was a little more important. Thanks to Dave, they're safe from common thugs. But now that her escape is an official family matter, they can't do anything about the knights chasing them. However, Ellie smirks, pointing with confidence. She chose this town for a reason. Here in Penicilla, she declares they can get help from the local lord, revealing the next step in her grand plan. Elizabeth explains her brilliant plan. The local lord's daughter, a woman named Olga Penicilla, is both her long-time social rival and her best friend. Asha realizes that if Ellie explains their situation, Olga will definitely help them shake off the knights. Beaming with confidence, Elizabeth marches them right up to the Penicilla mansion. She knocks, and the door is answered by a serious-looking butler. Putting on her most charming smile, Elizabeth introduces herself as Olga's friend and asks if it's possible to see her, even though she's arrived unannounced. The butler looks completely confused by Elizabeth's request. He clarifies if she means the poor lady, Olga, before dropping an absolute bombshell. The Penicilla family, he reveals, has completely collapsed and no longer lives in the mansion. Elizabeth is stunned silent. Her entire plan hinged on help from one of the most prestigious families in the empire. How could they just be gone? As she's reeling from the shocking news, a mysterious old woman's voice calls out from nearby, telling Elizabeth to come over to her. This just keeps getting weirder. Elizabeth is completely speechless. The old woman removes her goofy glasses, revealing a familiar face. It's Olga. Stunned, Elizabeth demands to know what happened, but Olga quickly shushes her, warning her not to be so reckless. Worried about tarnishing her family's name, Olga leads them to a rundown, dirty building. She then delivers the final, devastating blow. The Marquis of Penicilla was scammed. The once great family lost everything in sight. Elizabeth's best laid plan has completely fallen apart. Her only hope for help is now just as broke as she's trying to be. Olga explains that her family's troubles began 3 years ago. Her brother joined the army to help with a civil war, but he sustained terrible injuries and sadly didn't make it. Devastated by the loss, her father was approached by a sketchy peddler with a proposition. The man claimed he was creating a miracle cure, an antibiotic that he would name penicillin, after their family if the Marquis invested. Overwhelmed with grief, her father poured their entire fortune into the project, sealing their family's financial ruin with a single, desperate decision. Olga finishes her tragic story. Lost in grief, her father invested their entire fortune into the scam, leading to their complete ruin. The devastating news sends Elizabeth crashing to her knees, completely overwhelmed by the failure of her plan. A shocked Olga begs her to stand up, but Elizabeth is lost in a painful memory. She recalls begging Olga in the past, pleading for her to convince the Marquis to withdraw from the disastrous investment. She had hoped a neutral party could change his mind, but her desperate plea had clearly failed. The memory continues as Elizabeth recalls her desperate plea. A younger Olga questioned the plan, doubting her father would listen to a stranger when he wouldn't even listen to his own daughter. Back in the present, Elizabeth sighs, then hardens her expression. She agrees to try and help, asking Olga if she knows where to find the peddler who scammed them. Olga promises to find the address and rushes off. Asha quietly asks if she's really going to get involved, but Elizabeth is firm, stating she can't ignore a request from an old friend. Elizabeth declares that Olga's family is not one to be trifled with. For them to be completely swindled out of their fortune is a huge deal, and she can't let a scammer like that walk free. Suddenly, Dave's voice chimes in, admiring her strong sense of justice. He pledges to be her knight, promising that if a situation requires force, she just has to say the word. Touched, Ellie gazes at him, but Asha cuts their moment short. She bluntly asks what they'll do about the pursuers now, reminding Ellie they can't hide in the cabin forever. With the immediate threat dealt with, Elizabeth's face turns bright red. She sheepishly admits to Asha that she never actually had a backup plan. Unsurprised, Asha takes charge, declaring they'll lay low in the city for a few days and that she'll book the biggest hotel in town. Ellie's excitement returns in a flash. Since she's trying to go broke anyway, she demands they get the absolute best and most expensive room available. But upon arriving, their plan hits an unexpected snag. The hotel staff informs her the luxury suite is already taken. Just then, a man with silver hair and a sharp grin appears, announcing his presence. Elizabeth recognizes him instantly. Crown Prince Eden Orvia. Dave immediately pulls Ellie behind him, demanding to know why the prince is there. Eden just smirks, taunting Dave about still chasing after Lady Knightley. He complains that their reckless carriage ride made them hard to catch. The tension between the two men skyrockets as Eden claims he did Dave a favor, yet received no thanks. Completely confused, Dave asks what favor he could possibly be talking about. Eden smugly explains his favor. He says that upon entering the city, he saw the Knightley family's private soldiers searching for them. Using his royal authority, he blocked the pursuers from entering the hotel. Before anyone can react, he drops an even bigger bombshell, announcing he's there to propose to Elizabeth. Dave is stunned, but Eden reveals the grim truth. This is an imperial decree. After years of conflict, the Empire's treasury is empty, and the Emperor desires the knightly fortune. To get it, Eden must marry Ellie and make her the crown princess. Eden corners Elizabeth, asking if she's already engaged to Grand Duke Fitzgerald. Completely flustered, Ellie admits she received a proposal but questions if it was even real. Internally, how Dave's offer felt more like a rejection. Seeing her hesitation, the prince smugly declares that if their relationship isn't official, then anyone has the right to propose to her. Interrupting the tense standoff, Ellie gets a mischievous idea. She tells Asha they should get 2 rooms now that there are more people. But a furious Dave grabs her arm, clearly not on board. The crown prince smirks, asking if her request for 2 rooms means she and the Grand Duke aren't sharing one. Flustered, Ellie looks to her maid for backup. But Asha just hints that she already knows about their lively night together. Mortified, Ellie remembers her passionate evening with Dave and wishes the ground would swallow her whole. Before she can recover, Dave roughly pulls her away. Unimpressed, Asha steps in, telling the Grand Duke she thought he had more pride, leaving him completely stunned by her boldness. Trying to escape the suffocating tension, Ellie announces they're all going to their rooms to rest. She grabs Dave's arm, attempting to drag him away from the confrontation. Asha obediently follows her lady up the stairs, walking right past the Crown Prince, with him giving him a second thought. Completely ignored and disrespected, Eden is left fuming in silence. His hand clenches into a tight fist, his royal pride taking a massive hit after being snubbed by a common maid in front of his rival. Peeking from their hiding spot, the group sees guards swarming the hotel street. The captain yells that Lady Elizabeth is unpredictable and orders his men to grab anyone who even looks like her. To blend in, Ellie smudges dirt on her face with a hand mirror, confused why her commoner disguise isn't working like it did in stories. Suddenly, Asha lunges at a familiar face from the mansion, scaring the man half to death as payback for his past behavior. Dragged along by Dave, Ellie asks if the doctor's house is far away. Asha explains that their path forces them to cross the main road. Ellie's face falls, realizing that's exactly where her uncle's private soldiers are swarming. Panicked, she asks what they're supposed to do. Dave reassures her not to worry, his hand tightening on the hilt of his sword, ready for a confrontation. But before he can step forward, Asha stops him. She tells the Grand Duke to stay back and protect Ellie, saving him as their trump card. With a determined look, the loyal maid declares that she will act as bait to divert them. Ellie grabs her, horrified by the plan. Ellie argues that the plan is far too dangerous, but Asha is completely determined. The loyal maid explains that her father always said a knight's duty is to fulfill their master's wishes. Even though she can't be an official knight, she intends to honor her lady's desire for freedom. After entrusting Ellie's safety to Dave, Asha boldly steps out onto the main street. When the guards confront her, she calmly points them in the wrong direction, claiming that's the way Lady Elizabeth went, successfully buying her friends some time. As the guards take the bait and chase after a ghost, Ellie watches in terror from the alley. Dave places a steadying hand on her shoulder, confidently telling her that a resourceful woman like Asha will have no trouble getting away. Urging Ellie to hurry, they press on. The scene suddenly shifts. A man named Fleming introduces himself as a pharmacist who was once backed by the powerful Priscilla Marcus family. But his past has caught up to him. He's forced to the ground as an accuser calls him a fraud, blaming his years of failed results for the family's downfall. As the pharmacist is accused of being a fraud, Ellie demands to know what's going on. Fleming panics, insisting it's all a misunderstanding. He quickly grabs a small vial from his workshop and presents it to her. He explains that this is a powerful new medicine, an antibiotic called penicillin, that prevents infections. Ellie is completely shocked. The revolutionary cure she thought was a distant dream has already been created, and it's right here in her hands. This changes everything for her plans. Fleming eagerly launches into a scientific explanation, but Ellie cuts him off. She doesn't care about the process. She wants to know why the family that funded this miracle cure is still broke. She points out that a drug this revolutionary should be incredibly marketable. The pharmacist breaks down in despair, admitting the shocking truth: not a single person wants to buy it. Ellie is completely baffled by this news. As Fleming panics, Dave calmly steps in, stating that there's a very specific reason for the product's failure. Dave drops a bombshell. The Merchant Guild is blocking the sale of penicillin. Specifically, the guild that supplies wound medicine to the military. Fleming, trembling with rage, explains their dirty tactics. They destroy his research, spread rumors calling him a fraud, and do anything to stop him because their own medicine can't compete. Dave adds that they've likely bribed the officials who decide on military supplies. The terrible truth hits Ellie like a lightning bolt. This is military corruption. Her eyes immediately flick to the one person she knows with military ties, the Northern Grand Duke. With Ellie staring at him, Dave calmly reveals his true identity. He is the commander-in-chief of the Civil Suppression Army and the Empire's finest knight. He promises her his full support. Ellie's mind is completely blown. But Dave isn't done. He smugly suggests that if things get tricky, they can always call on that powerful person they left behind at the hotel, the Crown Prince. A switch flips in Ellie's brain. Grabbing his hands, she declares him an absolute genius. Filled with confidence, Eva says the baffled pharmacist that she will handle everything. Brimming with new energy, Ellie declares that she will handle this problem perfectly. She confidently tells the stunned pharmacist to trust her, explaining that Dave helped her come up with a great plan. Moved by her conviction, Fleming rushes off and returns with a large box of his other potions. He insists she take them as a thank you. Ellie tries to politely refuse, but Dave whispers that she'll have to accept them. Flustered, she takes the armful of strange tonics, promising to put them to good use. After thanking the pharmacist, Ellie and Dave make a quick getaway. But just 15 minutes later, trouble finds them. A group of guards storms the area, shouting that the lady couldn't have gone far. Dave quickly yanks Ellie into a dark, cramped hiding spot, pressing her against him to stay out of sight. Peeking through a crack, he whispers that more men are coming, so they're stuck there for a while. Flustered by their sudden closeness, Ellie's face turns bright red. Noticing her reaction, Dave quietly asks if she's feeling suffocated. Flustered, Ellie clarifies that it's not suffocation. It's just that the space is ridiculously small, and they're pressed way too close. Suddenly, the vibe gets intense as Dave stares down at her. Ellie yelps that he's crushing her against his chest, but he quickly apologizes, looking embarrassed himself. She tells him it's fine, but her mind is racing. This is nothing like the novels. Instead of a fancy room or a flower bush, they're crammed into a dusty toolbox. With her back aching, she wonders how long they'll be stuck there. Trying to steady herself, Ellie gropes around in the dark, thinking there must be something to hold on to. As something hard keeps poking her side, she finally gets a grip on it and innocently asks Dave if he has a sword strapped to his waist. Dave's entire face flushes red as he stammers that what she's holding is definitely not a sword. Utterly flustered, he apologizes, explaining that their close proximity, combined with her unique scent, is having a very strong effect on him, leaving Ellie completely bewildered by his confession. Overwhelmed, Dave confesses the effects are just too strong. He buries his face in Ellie's shoulder, whispering her name. She questions him, confused, but he just apologizes, admitting that his body feels incredibly hot. Before Ellie can process what's happening, he suddenly closes the distance between them. In the middle of this intense moment, he murmurs that she must stay quiet. He warns her that if she makes any noise, they will definitely get caught by the people searching outside, leaving Ellie completely stunned. Just as Dave warns her to be quiet, shouts erupt from the alley. Her pursuers are right outside. Luckily, the men are convinced she's already escaped to another area and quickly run off to continue their search elsewhere. As their footsteps fade, Ellie assumes the danger is over. But Dave leans in closer, apologizing and admitting he can't hold himself back any longer. Before she can react, he closes the final gap between them. Whatever just happened, it leaves Ellie completely breathless as he gently takes her hand, his intense gaze fixed on her. Things spiral out of control as Dave, completely overwhelmed by his condition, pulls Ellie into a passionate embrace. Caught off guard, she dazedly whispers his name, lost in the intense moment. He admits the feeling is strange before giving in completely. The scene shifts to the next morning, making it clear their night together has changed everything between them. Elsewhere, in a lavish mansion, a mysterious silver-haired man calmly reads a newspaper. His focus on business news hunts that while our heroes were preoccupied, other powerful figures are making moves in the shadows. The mysterious silver-haired man's caught off guard when Asha rushes into the room alone. He asks about her mission, wondering if the lady has returned with her. His calm demeanor shatters when he realizes she's by herself. He springs to his feet, urgently demanding to know where the other two are. Noticing she's hurt, his anger shifts to concern. Asha explains she only got a small scratch while dodging their attackers, confirming that the group was ambushed and is now separated, leaving their fate unknown. The silver-haired man asks Asha if there's any word on the lady's return. Asha reports that there's been no contact, and she had assumed they would all come back together. She quickly announces she must go find Elizabeth herself. As she turns to leave, the man grabs her arm, his sharp eyes noticing her injury. He shouts that she's hurt and questions her sanity, pointing out that the streets are crawling with pursuers. He demands to know how she plans to handle multiple enemies alone, but Asha's resolve is unshakable. She insists it's her duty. The silver-haired man grabs Asha's arm, insisting Lady Elizabeth is safe with the Grand Duke. He warns that charging out now would be a foolish risk. Despite her protests, he firmly pushes her into a chair and bellows for a doctor to treat her injury. Asha is completely stunned by his intense overreaction, privately thinking it's just a small scratch. As a physician quickly gets to work, Asha eyes the man suspiciously. She questions his motives, wondering if this is all just a calculated act to earn favor with her lady. After all his shouting, the silver-haired man's demeanor completely changes. He approaches the still-seated Asha and awkwardly clears his throat. Without a word, he slips off his own expensive jacket and gently drapes it over her shoulders, telling her she'll get cold and should wear it. He seems flustered but also visibly relieved that her injury isn't serious. Asha is totally stunned by this sudden, kind gesture. Wrapped in his coat, she eyes him suspiciously, wondering if this person's concern could actually be genuine. Dave calls out to Asha, who immediately spots Elizabeth and rushes to her side. The two friends embrace, relieved that the other is safe. But the sweet reunion ends when Asha notices her ladies look surprisingly messy. She asks what happened, causing Elizabeth to blush furiously while a smug-looking Dave stands behind her. Eager to shift the attention, Elizabeth turns to the silver-haired man on the couch. With a serious look, she announces that she has something important to tell him. Elizabeth cuts to the chase, telling the silver-haired man she needs his help with a serious problem: corruption in the defense industry. She explains they need to investigate a military supplier, but can't get access to their records without a royal decree. The man is hesitant, aware that if they make a move and find nothing, powerful nobles will retaliate. Just then, Dave steps in, addressing the man as Your Highness. Dave confirms their suspicions, stating that as a knight, he's seen the quality of medical supplies steadily decline. The silver-haired prince thinks it over. He knows the royal family needs any excuse to keep the power-hungry nobles in line, and this investigation could be the key. Yet, even with all the facts laid out, he hesitates. Noticing this, Dave smirks and asks if His Highness is actually scared. That one comment flips a switch. The prince slams his hands on the table and jumps to his feet, absolutely furious at the accusation. Without another moment of delay, he yells for his guards, ordering them to form an investigation team immediately. Fired up, the prince yells for his men to assemble an investigation team on the double. He commands them to find out exactly which merchant group supplies medicine to the Priscilla military camp. As his guards rush off, Elizabeth reflects that Dave is a master at provoking His Highness. Dave just smirks, asking if the problem is solved now. But Elizabeth shakes her head. They still need an established vendor to supply the military. Turning to her maid, she nervously asks if they still have their funding. Asha confidently confirms they do. With her mind made up, Elizabeth declares that they're going all in. Cost is no object. They will create a completely convincing shop to become the new military supplier. Inside their new location, things are already chaotic as workers move equipment around. A meticulous woman in a lab coat directs the setup, making sure everything is perfect. When she spots Elizabeth and Asha arriving, her face absolutely lights up. Full of gratitude, she thanks her new boss for creating such a fantastic workshop for her team. Under a dark hood, Elizabeth smirks, announcing that the shop will now be run by the Priscilla family. She believes that just like a knight's weapon reflects their status, a shop's quality is judged by its cleanliness. And their new place is absolutely spotless. The military hospital has already been rigorously testing their new medicine, penicillin, and confirmed it's highly effective. The lead scientist, Fleming, tells her team to just focus on production. Just as things are settling down, the door bursts open as an angry man storms in, shouting her name. The man storms in, screaming at the lead scientist, calling her a fraud who scammed her way into the building. But before anyone can react, Elizabeth steps forward with a cunning smile. She calmly identifies him as the head of the infamous Lemble Merchant Guild, the very man who diluted medicine meant for soldiers. She reminds him his fraud was so blatant the imperial court launched an investigation. The man sweats, stammering that it's all baseless slander. Unfazed, Elizabeth just smirks, asking if he's really that confident. Just then, a delivery arrives from the Lemble Merchant Guild. A man brings in 10 bottles of their wound medicine, and Elizabeth calmly pays for the order. With a clever smile, she holds up one of the vials they just received. Then, she reveals a second, identical-looking bottle, explaining it's the medicine from her own pharmacy. Holding both up for the fuming guild head to see, she asks if he thinks they look the same. Cornered by her trap, the man can only grit his teeth in silent rage. Elizabeth smirks, revealing this wasn't just an accusation. She had solid proof. Over the last few days, the military hospital was quietly investigated under the Crown Prince's direct orders. Unsurprisingly, they found the medicine supplied by the Lemble Merchant Guild was basically useless, far too diluted to be effective despite its absurdly high price. The official conclusion was clear. The guild had intentionally reduced the quality of their product for profit. Faced with the undeniable evidence, the guild master can only grit his teeth, trapped and exposed by Elizabeth's cunning plan. Realizing it was all a trap, the guild master's accomplice tries to bolt. But Elizabeth is way ahead of her, grabbing the woman before she can escape. With a smug grin, Ellie tells her they aren't done yet. She then addresses the entire room as her lead scientist steps forward. The scientist asks the crowd how much they usually pay for the Lemble Guild's medicine. The answer is a whopping 5 silver coins per bottle. With perfect timing, Elizabeth proudly announces that her pharmacy sells a better product for only 3. The accomplice absolutely loses it, shrieking that they're insane. The guild master loses his mind, shouting that it's impossible to make the medicine for that price. But Elizabeth's scientist just grins, dropping a bombshell: the actual production cost is only 1 shilling. Ellie explains that the guild inflates its prices to pay off nobles and cover its tracks. The accomplice desperately offers to lower their price, but Asha coolly presents a contract. For the final blow, Ellie's team announces that for their grand opening, they'll be selling a superior medicine for a single shilling. The scientist beams, announcing they'll sell the medicine below its production cost. The crowd is baffled, wondering how they'll turn a profit. She reassures them, explaining their pharmacy has plenty of other effective treatments to make up for it. Then, a hooded Elizabeth steps forward with a declaration. This low price is dedicated to the soldiers who serve the Empire. As cameras flash, capturing the moment for the papers, Elizabeth smirks. Her philosophy is simple: an eye for an eye, and money for money. The guildmaster looks absolutely crushed, knowing he was beaten by massive wealth. With a smirk, Elizabeth explains her endgame. A price war is coming, and her plan is to choke out the guild's income. If they can't make money, they can't pay their bribes, and the nobles protecting them will disappear. Seeing his entire operation crumble, the guildmaster tries to sneak away, but Ellie blocks his path. She cheerfully informs him that he's not going anywhere, he needs to stick around for questioning. As the authorities escort him out, Elizabeth gives him a sweet little wave. Later, she's in a new dress when a voice suddenly calls her name. A young noblewoman, Olga of the Penicilla Marquis family, formally thanks Elizabeth for her help. Elizabeth explains the aftermath of their victory. The new medicine was a massive success, forcing the corrupt merchant guild to pay a huge sum before being completely shut down. Olga says her family can finally find peace. Ellie then reveals that the Marquis's power is now protecting them, kicking out anyone who is chasing her. With a cunning look, she tells a surprised Olga to prepare herself, because some very esteemed guests are coming specifically to meet her. The esteemed guests arrive at the Marquis's estate, and to Elizabeth's surprise, Dave is among them. She asks what he's doing there, but a maid interrupts before he can answer. Welcoming her, the maid gestures to a grand room and announces that she'll be staying there, with His Highness the Grand Duke. Both Ellie and Dave are completely stunned by the news. The maid cheerfully explains this was a special arrangement from Lady Olga herself. While Dave looks absolutely mortified, a deep blush spreads across Ellie's face. Looks like Olga is playing matchmaker. Olga gives a cheeky wink, explaining that this is exactly what friends are for. But Elizabeth is absolutely losing her mind over this little favor. Dave calmly suggests that he should probably ask for a separate room. Hearing this, Ellie can barely get a word out, her face turning bright red. She stammers that since they aren't engaged or married, they shouldn't be together. Instead of agreeing, Dave just leans in closer, a serious look on his face. Totally flustered, Ellie wonders if he actually expected her to say yes. As Elizabeth panics, her mind flashes back to the passionate night she and Dave already shared. She remembers every single thing they did together. Before she can even react to the memory, Dave leans in and gives her a soft kiss on the cheek. With a sly grin, he announces he'll go request a new room. He gently takes her hand, leans in close one last time, and wishes her sweet dreams. He walks away, leaving a completely stunned and red-faced Ellie behind. He's definitely messing with her. Later that night, Elizabeth turns to Asha and asks a strange question. Does Asha think she's a beast? A confused Asha barely responds before Ellie tells her to forget it and dives under the covers. Asha thinks about asking her something but decides it's probably nothing. The next morning, Ellie meets with Olga, who set up the matchmaking. She jokingly asks if the person she's supposed to meet is the crown prince. Just then, a sharp-looking, silver-haired man sits down, suggesting he's the one she's really here to see. The sharp-looking man immediately starts trouble, telling Elizabeth not to intimidate her match. He smirks, noting she doesn't seem happy to see him. Playing along, Ellie asks why he's here instead of in the capital. He casually says he forgot about his duties. Then he drops a ridiculous bombshell. The Emperor ordered him not to return until he successfully wins Elizabeth's heart. He proposes joining their group on the spot, but Dave immediately shuts him down. The man accuses Dave of using his childhood friendship as an unfair advantage, leaving Ellie to frantically deny inviting him. Olga calmly clarifies that the silver-haired man isn't Elizabeth's real guest. Due to his royal status, they simply had to host him first out of courtesy. Completely lost, Ellie looks around and asks who she's actually supposed to be meeting then. At that exact moment, a new guy with a cheerful face and a very questionable fashion sense steps up. Wearing a bright green vest and a yellow body, he introduces himself with a massive smile, saying it's a pleasure to finally meet Lady Elizabeth Knightley. This must be the real date. The man in the green vest drops a bombshell, asking Elizabeth to save the entire Orvie Empire. Ellie is totally confused. She's here to spend money, not play hero. He formally introduces himself as Michelle Turner, from the family that created the Empire's most famous newspaper, Orvian's Morning Glory. Elizabeth and Asha recognize the name immediately. It's the paper read by half the nation. But Michelle reveals a shocking truth: his family lost control of it a long time ago. He claims it was stolen by a mysterious group known as the Warmongers. Michelle begins to explain the massive political mess he's caught in. He lays out how the Orvian Empire spent decades unifying the continent through conquest. However, this peace is fragile, as resistance movements in the borderlands continue to fight for their independence. These endless conflicts are incredibly expensive, and while the citizens and royals want to negotiate an end, some people are getting rich. These are the warmongers. Nobles who profit from the chaos, expanding their own businesses while other families are ruined by the constant fighting. Michelle goes on, explaining the warmongers' master plan. They got rich by seizing control of the media to push their own agenda. Their network of crime runs deep, from loan sharks to fraudsters messing with medicine. He reveals these crooks are just puppets, backed by powerful nobles, who let them do whatever they want. For the past dozen years, however, there has been one person this entire shadowy group fears. He asks Elizabeth if she knows who it is. Asha quickly guesses it must be the Imperial family. Michiel smirks, correcting Asha's guess about the Imperial family. He reveals the warmonger's greatest fear wasn't a royal, but someone much closer to Elizabeth, her own father, Count Knightley. The revelation completely stuns Ellie, leaving her frozen in place. After Misha's visit, she's withdrawn and pensive, just staring out the window. Elsewhere, a silver-haired man of high standing wonders what could have been said to her. His dark-haired companion then asks him a very direct question: is he aware of the warmongers? The Grand Duke coolly confirms he knows of the warmongers, identifying them as a faction of war, hungry nobles led by the Chancellor. His companion then reveals a visitor posed a chilling question, who pushed Uncle Ronald to turn on his own brother. Elsewhere, another man explains the Knightley family history to Elizabeth. Their massive wealth, built on gold mines, made them a huge obstacle to the warmongers. He reveals that after her father's disappearance, Ellie has unknowingly blocked their schemes twice, making her a far bigger target than she ever realized. The man explains that because Ellie is such a huge public figure, even the warmongers can't just make her disappear. Hearing this, another ally states his own goal: he wants to take back the newspaper his grandfather founded. Elizabeth sighs, finally turning to face the persistent silver-haired noble. She calls him out, saying he'd just find an excuse to follow her anyway. Resigned, she agrees to let him join their group, which completely shocks Aisha. But Ellie makes it clear she's in charge. She has one condition: she's going to use his powerful position and status for her own plans. The silver-haired noble looks completely stunned by Elizabeth's terms. She lays down the law, stating that if he's only after her inheritance, she needs something from him in return. He tries to argue, saying he already used his authority to investigate for her. But Ellie shuts that down immediately, claiming that was just his duty as a royal. Then, she gets straight to the point. She declares her true price for his companionship. She needs to know why her parents passed away and who was responsible. She proposes a simple, cold deal: they will use each other. The silver-haired noble stares at Ellie, completely floored by her business-like attitude. He can't believe her audacity, reminding her that she just received a marriage proposal from the crown prince himself. He asks how she dares to treat such a massive honor like a simple transaction. His expression turns deadly serious as he leans in, questioning if she is truly prepared to take responsibility for her bold and dangerous words. He's making it clear that this isn't a game, and her demands have serious consequences. The silver-haired noble warns Elizabeth that her proposal is dangerously close to an act of treason against the royal family. He looks serious, making sure she understands the weight of her demands. Despite the heavy implications, he lets out a tired sigh and completely caves, agreeing to her terms. He then admits the real reason he's so willing to join them. He complains that trying to keep up with the Duke's reckless carriage driving was a total nightmare. The chase was so rough that he got seriously motion sick and has zero interest in repeating that awful experience. The silver-haired noble reveals his real strategy. He explains the imperial family's finances are in trouble because other nobles are getting too powerful. He wants Elizabeth to act as his hidden card. By becoming a walking sensation who draws all the attention, she'll create the perfect cover for the royals to uncover their rivals' weaknesses and take back control. As he proposes they work together, the scene shifts to Duke Dave. He looks completely bored, stating he'd rather not deal with reckless troublemakers. But Elizabeth just smirks, declaring his comment settles the matter. With their deal nearly settled, Elizabeth looks at the silver-haired noble and adds one last condition. She declares that she hopes he will be the one to cancel their fake engagement someday. He just smirks, amused by her confidence, and takes her hand to seal their unusual partnership. Later, Elizabeth and Duke Dave have arrived at a new location. She asks if there have been any updates on their pursuers. Dave shakes his head, stating there's nothing yet. He explains that their enemies lack the power to openly oppose her powerful new connections, especially the Crown Prince's knights. For now, they've been forced to retreat. With their preparations complete, Elizabeth announces their next destination, Marseilles. She recalls how their past adventures kept her from properly spending her fortune. But Marseilles is the city of luxury and indulgence, the perfect place to finally go broke. With a fairy determination, she declares that this time, she'll show everyone what a true spending spree looks like. She turns to find Dave trying to stifle a grin. Catching his amused expression, she playfully asks if he's angry. He just feigns innocence, asking what he could possibly be mad about. Dave brings up a sore subject, admitting he knows Elizabeth dislikes the Crown Prince, but he brought him into their plans anyway. She quickly brushes it off, telling him it's fine. Dave clarifies his position, stating that she's the leader on this journey. He's merely her companion. But he reveals a deeper reason for his support. He admits he understands her desperate need to uncover the truth about her parents. As he turns away, Elizabeth has a sudden realization. She remembers that Dave's own father, a legendary war hero, also lost his life in a great battle. Elizabeth processes new information, realizing the tragedy runs much deeper. Dave's mother, the Duchess of Fitzgerald, also met a terrible end. While performing an act of kindness, handing out bread to refugees, she was ambushed and her life was cut short. The sudden loss of both of his parents became huge news across the entire nation. Their devastating story was then twisted and used by others to keep the civil war going for their own benefit. Elizabeth looks on, a new level of understanding in her eyes. Dave reveals he still doesn't know who was truly responsible for his mother's end. Whether it was a desperate refugee or a noble's subordinate trying to prolong the war. He admits that at this point, uncovering the truth may be impossible. Still, he finds purpose in their quest, saying that if they succeed in developing medicine, many lives could be saved, making the journey worthwhile. Deeply moved, Elizabeth softly thanks him. Dave's expression softens as he gently cups her face, leaning in to place a light kiss on her temple. Pulling back with a playful smirk, he asks why her face is so red this time. Elizabeth is left completely speechless, her cheeks flushing bright crimson. Flustered, Elizabeth stammers that she's only red-faced because he revealed so much at once. Dave pulls her closer, a playful smirk on his face, noting that her reaction wasn't because of the kiss. His tone then shifts, becoming serious as he gently takes her hand. Calling her Elias, his one and only lady, he assures her that marriage isn't the only path forward. He then makes a heartfelt offer, once their journey is over. If she hasn't found her place, she should consider coming to him, leaving her completely speechless. Just as Dave finishes his stunning proposal, a voice cuts through the charged air. Asha calls out from the distance, announcing that everything is ready for their departure. Her shouting snaps Elizabeth out of her daze. Without a second thought or a word to Dave, she spins around and makes a run for it. The sound of her quick footsteps echoes as she hurries away from the Grand Duke, leaving him standing alone while she rushes to continue her escape. At the capital, inside the Knightley estate, Uncle Ronald was furious. He slammed a newspaper down on his desk, livid that an entire night order had failed to capture his niece, fleeing with only her maid. One of his men nervously reported that they'd been stopped by an absolute monster who joined Elizabeth midway through her escape. As if that wasn't bad enough, the Crown Prince's own guards had also blocked their path. Another subordinate revealed the crucial information. The man protecting Elizabeth was Grand Duke Dave Fitzgerald, the renowned hero of the borderlands. The news was a massive blow. Ronald sank into his chair, completely stunned. He had known about Elizabeth's childhood friendship with the Grand Duke, but he never imagined she could also get the Crown Prince on her side. His simple plan to control her inheritance had just escalated into a major political headache involving two of the Empire's most powerful men. As his subordinate laid out the grim reality, Uncle Ronald's plans began to crumble. The advisor nervously suggested that if the imperial family made Elizabeth the Crown Princess to solve their financial woes, they would be completely powerless. He proposed a safer path: let Elizabeth go, arrange a different marriage for her, and simply take whatever benefit they could as her family. Ronald's expression twisted into a sneer of contempt. He was furious, questioning why he paid for such weak-willed advice. He rejected the idea immediately. This was no longer just about the knightly fortune, it was about his very survival. He knew Crown Prince Eden was a cunning man. If the prince married Elizabeth, he would undoubtedly reopen the investigation into her parents' suspicious carriage accident to eliminate any future threats. All the bribes Ronald had paid would become useless. With no time to hesitate, Ronald declared a new strategy. He ordered his men to contact every noble who favored continuing the war. If the imperial family wouldn't side with him, he would ally with their enemies instead. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's journey continued in an incredibly crowded carriage. She was joined by Grand Duke Dave, her maid Asha, and the ever-smug Crown Prince Eden. Breaking the silence, Eden commented on how uncomfortably tight the seating was, clearly trying to stir the pot. However, Asha, still playing the role of Elizabeth's protective fiancée, had wedged herself firmly between her lady and the Grand Duke. She bluntly stated that the seating was just fine. When Eden suggested someone should move, Asha refused. She coolly explained that in broad daylight, it was improper for a frail young lady to sit beside a certain beast who had nearly caused a major scandal. The pointed remark made both Elizabeth and Dave flush with embarrassment. Later, Dave finally got a moment alone with Elizabeth. He pressed her against a wall, his frustration clear. He leaned in close, whispering that this whole situation was becoming very troubling for him. His grip on her dress tightened, showing just how much he was holding back. Crown Prince Eden stares, shocked by the Grand Duke's forwardness in public. He mutters that Dave is a beast, adding to the couple's mortification as Asha sits triumphantly between them. Just then, their driver announces their arrival in the city of Marses. Elizabeth wastes no time, practically jumping out of the carriage to escape the awkward atmosphere. Instantly, her mood shifts. Gazing at the beautiful city, she tells Asha that this is the perfect place to spend money. Elizabeth gets excited, explaining that Marses' hotel services are beyond imagination, offering everything from personal pianists to designer clothing rentals. Her main goal, however, is the premium spa. Soon enough, Elizabeth is unwinding in a plush robe, fully embracing her mission to go broke. An attendant confirms that her bath, infused with the finest perfumes and greenhouse roses, is ready. The first phase of her extravagant bankruptcy plan is officially underway. As Elizabeth enters the premium spa, she's stopped in her tracks by an unexpected sight. It's Grand Duke Dave, wearing nothing but a towel. He's just as surprised, blushing as he asks why she's suddenly in his bathroom. Before either can process the situation, a cheerful attendant reveals the hotel's mistake. Thinking they're a honeymooning couple, the staff has prepared a special, shared bath experience for them. With a slight nudge from an attendant, Elizabeth loses her balance and tumbles right into Dave's arms. They land in a deeply awkward embrace, surrounded by a tub full of floating rose petals. Dave, completely flustered, points out that the hem of her robe has come loose. But instead of shying away, Elizabeth looks him straight in the eye. Taking charge of the chaotic moment, she boldly asks if he wants to bathe together, leaving the powerful Grand Duke utterly stunned. The group settles in for an incredibly lavish meal. While Dave seems at ease, Crown Prince Eden and Asha look stunned by the sheer opulence. Elizabeth, however, is completely unfazed. She takes a large, happy bite of steak, declaring that a great meal is the best way to cheer up. Watching her eat with such gusto, a horrified Eden can only mutter that she's a beast. The table is filled with extravagant dishes, including steak topped with gold leaf and truffles. Eden begins to sweat, nervously asking how much a meal like this even costs. Amused by his cousin's panic, Dave smirks. He coolly remarks that Eden sounds pathetic for a crown prince, reminding him that the imperial family is completely broke. As the two royals bicker, Elizabeth reflects on her mission. This truly is a bankruptcy trip, and she wonders what other grand plans they have to spend her fortune. With a confident smirk, Elizabeth informs the panicked crown prince that there are endless ways to spend money. She snaps her fingers, officially kicking off her grand bankruptcy tour. First, she buys a spectacular fireworks display that illuminates the city sky. Next, she rents out an entire theater for a private performance, just for her, Dave, and Asha. The spending spree moves to the shopping district, where Elizabeth buys everything that catches her eye. A pale and sweating crown prince Eden finally cracks. He desperately asks Asha why she's buying so much and pleads with her to make Elizabeth stop. Unfazed, Asha effortlessly carries a mountain of luxury goods. She coolly replies that there is no problem with her lady spending her own wealth. As a final power move, she even offers to carry the prince's things if they're too heavy for him, leaving him utterly speechless and defeated as she walks past. As the completely exhausted crown prince struggles to keep up, Elizabeth is already planning her next extravagant outing. She happily waves a pamphlet at Asha, announcing their next stop, a famous circus performing in Marseille that very night. However, once they arrive, the fun atmosphere immediately sours. Elizabeth's joyful expression melts away as she witnesses a disturbing scene. A trainer cracks a whip, trying to force a large, sad-looking elephant to perform difficult tricks. The animal is clearly being mistreated, and she refuses to stand by and watch. Her face hardening with cold anger, Elizabeth steps forward. She loudly calls out the trainer, demanding to know how he could justify being so cruel to an animal that couldn't even speak for itself. It seems her mission to go broke has just found a brand new, righteous cause. The circus director initially wonders who this unimpressive young woman is. His dismissive attitude vanishes when an employee frantically whispers in his ear, explaining that she is a VIP guest who has been spending an astronomical amount of money. Suddenly, the director is all smiles and apologies, tripping over himself to welcome his honored guest. Unimpressed by his sudden change of heart, Elizabeth gets straight to the point. She asks if it's possible to train the animals without hurting them. The director laughs nervously, offering a pathetic excuse that elephants need discipline to prevent bad habits. Elizabeth looks at the sad, young elephant being comforted by a boy and sees only cruelty. Ignoring the man's flimsy justification, she cuts him off with a question that leaves him speechless. She calmly asks how much the elephant costs. The director, completely caught off guard, can only stammer, asking her to repeat herself. It seems Elizabeth's shopping spree has taken a very unexpected turn. Elizabeth repeats her question, cutting through the director's shock. How much does the elephant cost? Her plan is simple. Buy the animal, set it free, and it won't suffer through any more training. She coolly adds that if the young elephant has a mother, she'll buy her as well, emphasizing she has more than enough money. But just as she makes her bold declaration, the young boy comforting the animal runs forward, pleading with her to stop. The director furiously snaps at Roby for interrupting. Ignoring him, Roby begs Elizabeth not to set the elephant free, leaving her completely stunned. Before she can process the bizarre request, Dave steps in. With a serious expression, he sides with the boy. He explains the grim reality of the region. A freed elephant would be captured by other merchants who deal in ivory and taxidermy. Her act of kindness would only lead to a much worse fate for the animal. Elizabeth's plan to free the elephant hits a major roadblock. Dave explains the harsh truth. Her act of kindness would only get the animal recaptured. Its new owners would be far crueler, interested only in ending its life for ivory. The grim reality of the situation sinks in. Asha then adds a crucial piece to the puzzle. She explains that just before the elephant trade boomed, this thriving tourist city suffered a strange and sudden economic collapse. Legitimate business owners mysteriously fell into debt, forcing them to turn to this cruel new trade to survive. The shuttered shops they see are a direct result of this disaster. Elizabeth is baffled. She knows this city has never had a downer, so what could have caused it? As she wonders aloud, a familiar voice casually offers to explain. Lounging in a nearby gondola, complete with sunglasses and a tropical drink, is Crown Prince Eden Orvia. His sudden and ridiculous appearance leaves Elizabeth and her companions completely speechless. Dave is the first to break the stunned silence, giving his cousin a look of complete disapproval. He bluntly asks what Eden is wearing. The Crown Prince, decked out in a flower lei and sunglasses, bristles at being called out for his over-the-top tourist outfit. He angrily points a finger at Dave, accusing him of ditching him earlier because he was too slow. Putting his personal grievances aside, Eden gestures toward the water. He coolly explains that the recent rise in poverty is all because of the canal. Confused, Elizabeth asks him to elaborate. Eden tells them it's a long story and invites them to join him in the gondola so they can talk on the way back to their hotel. As they drift along the water, Eden begins his tale. He explains that there were once two major canals on the western side of the empire. One was in the frontier, and the other was right here in this city. But, he adds ominously, everything changed during the last war. As their gondola drifted along, Crown Prince Eden began his story. He explained that during the last war, the state-owned canal on the frontier was completely destroyed by a bombing. Elizabeth didn't see the connection, pointing out that the canal in this city, Marseilles, was perfectly fine. With a smug look, Eden corrected her. Since the competition was eliminated, the Marseilles Canal now held a monopoly on all Western waterways. The private owner immediately took advantage and jacked up the tolls. The pieces clicked into place for Elizabeth. This was how the local merchants were forced into ruin. She demanded to know just how much the price had been raised. After a dramatic pause, Eden held up 5 fingers. He coolly stated that since the business was privatized, the toll had increased 5-fold. Elizabeth was stunned speechless, her shock quickly boiling into pure fury. She shouted that this wasn't business, it was straight-up robbery. Shaking with rage, Elizabeth argued there had to be some kind of business ethics. She yelled that raising the toll 5 times at once wasn't business, it was thuggery. While the Crown Prince lounged in his seat, Dave cut straight to the point, asking what the government did. Elizabeth agreed, questioning why the imperial family hadn't stepped in to stop the blatant price gouging. With a smug look, Eden told them not to glare, insisting the imperial family had its own side of the story. He explained that during the last war, the Lord of Marseilles had spent a fortune of his own money to support the knights. In return for this significant contribution, he demanded exclusive business rights to the canal running through his territory. The imperial family, not knowing the state-owned canal would later be destroyed, granted his request. Afterward, the price of goods skyrocketed. By the time they sent investigators, the Lord had already formed a powerful political faction with other nobles who profited from the war. Eden casually explained that the imperial family's wartime promise was unbreakable. The situation finally clicked for Elizabeth. The Lord of Marseilles was a classic war profiteer. With a smug look, Eden confirmed her suspicion, adding that trying to persuade the Lord was a waste of time. They would need to find a different way to solve this mess. Just then, their conversation was interrupted. A woman in a striking red dress stepped forward, asking if she was addressing Lady Elizabeth Knightley. After her assistant whispered a message, the woman announced she carried an invitation directly from the Lord's mansion. This development shocked Elizabeth. They were just told the Lord was unapproachable, yet here was a direct summons. For a moment, she thought this might be easier than they'd expected, but the woman smiled, clarifying a crucial detail. The invitation was for Lady Elizabeth and her alone. The Lord wished to discuss business with her in a private meeting. Elizabeth balked at the condition, questioning if she had to go alone. Before she could even process it, Dave firmly grabbed her arm, telling her it was too dangerous. Asha immediately backed him up, reminding Elizabeth that Lord Marseilles was a man who had successfully deceived the imperial family for his own benefit. If they all went together, it might be different, but sending her alone was a bad idea, as she was certain he wasn't inviting her for a polite business chat. Dave agreed, stating he was completely against it. His priority was her safety, and he couldn't stand the thought of something happening to her. Despite their protests, Elizabeth saw an opportunity. She reasoned that accepting this invitation was the quickest way to get a meeting with the otherwise unapproachable Lord. With a determined look, she declared her intention to go. Turning to the messenger, Elizabeth offered a polite smile and an apology. She explained that her guardians were simply worried and that she would go speak with them to sort it out. Elizabeth, however, had a clever plan. She revealed 2 small vials, one of Fleming's new prototypes. It was a sophisticated tracking system. By applying one vial like a perfume, anyone who drank the other could track her unique scent for 10 days. Its persistence meant it couldn't be washed off, ensuring her allies could find her. With a bright smile, she promised her worried guardians that she'd be back by dinner time. She reasoned that sometimes the only way to find clues is from within. Leaving Dave, Asha, and Eden completely stunned, she turned and confidently walked away with the Lord's messenger. Later, outside the mansion, Eden sighed. Just when he thought the day's work was over, he found himself on an unplanned stakeout. But he knew it was for a good reason. With Elizabeth walking into potential danger, her safety was now their #1 concern. With Elizabeth now inside the mansion, the impromptu stakeout is underway. Eden and Grand Duke Dave watch the main gate, while Asha guards the back. Eden remarks that with no idea what to expect from Lord Marseilles, waiting as close as possible is their only option. However, the Crown Prince's attention soon shifts from the mansion to Elizabeth's loyal maid. He turns to Asha, his expression calculating. He points out that her familiarity with the city is suspicious. She knows all the shortcuts to the Lord's mansion and seems to acquire hidden information with ease. Furthermore, he notes that she acts like she knows Lord Marseilles personally. Eden gets straight to the point, asking the one question that bothers him most. Why is a descendant of the legendary Knight Morton living as a simple maid for the Knightley family? Asha freezes, completely cornered by his sharp deduction. Just as the tension peaks, a familiar voice calls out her name. It's Olga, who has just arrived and grabs Asha's arm, asking in surprise if it's really her. While out with Crown Prince Eden, Elizabeth is stopped by a friendly-looking woman carrying a basket. She stares, completely baffled, asking who she is. The woman smiles kindly, saying it's no surprise she doesn't remember, as they haven't met since Elizabeth was a small child. To jog her memory, the woman pulls off her headscarf. A sudden flash of a long-lost recollection hits Elizabeth, this same woman holding her when she was just a little girl. Her eyes widen as the woman reintroduces herself. It's Mir, her mother's sister and her long-lost aunt. Stunned by the sudden family reunion, Elizabeth is at a loss for words. But her aunt quickly turns her attention to the smug-looking prince. With a cheerful grin, she asks if this handsome man is her boyfriend. As Elizabeth tries to deny it, Eden puffs his chest out, clearly loving the assumption. Too exhausted to explain the real situation, Elizabeth bluntly confirms her aunt's assumption. The prince is utterly floored, but she leans in and quietly tells him to just play along. Thrilled by this turn of events, Eden eagerly takes her hand, blushing as he confirms to Mir that he is, in fact, her boyfriend. Aunt Mir is delighted, calling them a well-matched couple. She expresses how relieved she is to see Elizabeth living well, though she grows somber, explaining how desolate her region has become, with many families being separated. Seeing their meeting as fate, she claps her hands and invites Elizabeth for tea, telling her to bring her handsome boyfriend along. The sudden weight of a family introduction hits Eden, and he freezes in comical shock. Meanwhile, at the stakeout, Olga's arrival gives Asha an escape from Eden's interrogation. Putting her professional demeanor back on, Asha coolly apologizes. She states that she is simply waiting for the young lady she serves, hiding her true purpose. Aunt Mir quickly proves to be a sharp and supportive ally. Seeing that her niece is in a difficult situation, she asks if there's any way to get news from inside the Lord's mansion. Mir explains she's on her way to deliver eggs there anyway, and kindly offers to gather information for her. Later, Elizabeth finds herself sitting across from that very Lord, Morgan Le Marseille. He calmly states that he's been observing her skills, admitting they were far beyond his expectations. He proposes a partnership, but then cuts to a more pressing issue. Setting his teacup down, Lord Marseille asks a chilling question. Does she know whose hand her Uncle Ronald has taken? He reveals the grim truth. Her uncle has allied himself with the Chancellor. This means Ronald now has a powerful political figure backing his schemes, making Elizabeth's fight for justice even more dangerous. Lord Marseille continues his lecture, twisting a lock of Elizabeth's hair. He patronizingly calls her young and kind, dismissing her recent triumphs as thoughtless choices made out of flimsy righteousness. He leans in, insisting that the world isn't moved by good deeds, but by money, a lesson he believes the knightly heir should already know. The Lord then reveals his own unhinged ambition. He points out that the Chancellor and his war-loving nobles currently hold the real power. But he has a plan. If Elizabeth's fortune were to combine with his assets, they could surpass the Chancellor and take control. His pitch escalates wildly, claiming they could even take over the entire empire. As he fantasizes, a dove magically appears in a flurry of feathers, leaving Elizabeth utterly disgusted. He moves uncomfortably close, calling her kitten, as he demands her answer to his insane proposal. Visibly uncomfortable, Elizabeth attempts to refuse Lord Marseille's unhinged proposal to take over the empire. He simply sighs, stating that he expected as much. With a snap of his fingers, his friendly act vanishes. Uniformed guards instantly appear and flank her. Before Elizabeth can react, a pair of metal restraints are snapped onto her wrists, binding her hands. She stares down in disbelief, completely caught off guard by the sudden aggression. Lord Marseille just offers her a smug wink. He tells her to take all the time she needs to think carefully, warning that a golden opportunity like this won't come again. His message is clear. She's now his prisoner. As she's led away, a disgusted Elizabeth thinks about what a truly strange man he is. But her fear quickly turns to resolve. Remembering she has some insurance for just this kind of situation, she decides that if she's going to be trapped here, she might as well start snooping around. Elizabeth spots Marsa's guards outside, realizing the main gate is not an option. She turns to Dave, hoping he knows another way for them to leave. Their escape is put on hold when a woman approaches them. She correctly identifies Elizabeth and says she's been searching for her. At the same time, Elizabeth's backup plan bears fruit. An ally presents a huge pile of documents swiped from the Lord's mansion. Looking at the sheer volume of evidence, the Crown Prince's companion remarks that Lord Marseille was either extremely bold or just plain stupid to be so careless with his secrets. The game has clearly changed. Elizabeth observes that there are likely several more rooms just like this one, concluding the most important ledgers are hidden elsewhere. Dave agrees, adding that the Lord's overconfidence in his noble connections probably led to the lax security. As they examine the massive pile of documents, Dave remarks that their contents are far from ordinary. Elizabeth proudly presents a paper, confirming they're all originals since each one bears the official seal of Lord Marseille's. The evidence is damning. The Lord paid a huge bribe to the Chancellor for exclusive canal rights and even faked a barbarian riot to get troops dispatched. While an ally wishes for a transaction ledger, Dave feels they have enough to inflict serious damage and maybe even negotiate. But Crown Prince Eden cuts in, insisting that won't be enough. He then turns directly to Asha, asking for a private word. Asha stands on the balcony, confused as to why Crown Prince Eden wanted to speak with her privately. The prince explains that he felt the need to apologize for his earlier careless words, but also because he believes he has figured out her secret. He looks her in the eye and states that Asha Morton is not a complete citizen of the Orbian Empire. Without hesitation, Asha confirms that his deduction is correct. Eden then brings up her father, Sir Clovis Morton, hailed as a national hero for suppressing a frontier civil war. But the prince drops a bombshell. That war was a sham. In reality, it was a scheme orchestrated by Lord Marseille to bomb a district canal. This act of sabotage was designed to let him monopolize the entire Western waterway. Asha is visibly shaken, realizing her father's legendary victory was built upon a massive lie. Asha calmly begins to tell her story, filling in the gaps for the prince. Her father, the celebrated knight Sir Clovis Morton, was summoned to the frontier to put down a rebellion. But when he arrived, he quickly realized the entire conflict was a setup and the locals had been framed as part of a larger conspiracy. During his time there, he fell for a frontier woman, and together they had a child, Asha. Tragically, just before he could expose the entire truth, he was murdered. This left Asha an orphan, caught between two worlds and belonging to neither. She reminds Eden of the time he questioned her intense loyalty. She explains that the Knightley family was the only one who ever accepted her and gave her a true home. Protecting Elizabeth isn't just a duty, it's a debt she fully intends to repay. With her story finished, she has one simple question for the prince. Why is he telling her all of this now? Asha calmly demands to know why the crown prince is really telling her all this. She points out that revealing her secret doesn't actually give him any leverage. She challenges him directly, asking if he plans to use this newfound weakness to try and control Elizabeth. Flustered, Eden insists that's not his intention at all, but Asha presses her advantage, stepping closer into his personal space. She flips the script entirely, asking if his interest is something more personal. The bold question catches the prince completely off guard, and a deep blush spreads across his face. Unfazed by his reaction, Asha moves in again, placing a hand on his cheek. She coolly asks why he's so surprised, stating that she has enough sense to figure things out. Then, she gets straight to the heart of the matter. She asks if His Highness has feelings for her, wondering aloud if it's admiration, simple curiosity, or just a common desire. The usually smug crown prince is left utterly speechless, cornered by her directness. Backed into a corner by Asha's bold question, Crown Prince Eden can no longer hide his true feelings. A blush creeps across his face as he admits he thought he was hiding his interest much better. Seeing her advantage, Asha smirks, asking if he intends to deny what is now so obvious. Surprisingly, Eden doesn't. He confirms her suspicions, but insists on correcting one major point. He recalls his past arrogance, dismissing Asha as a mere maid while scheming to exploit Elizabeth's anxieties for his own gain. He openly admits his behavior was deplorable. However, he draws a firm line. He clarifies that even then, his true target was always the political landscape and Elizabeth's assets, not her as a person. He was attempting to manipulate a situation for political power, not to control Elizabeth herself. It was a strategic play for the Empire, not a personal conquest. Eden insists he's not so shameless as to use Asha's background to control her. His frustration is obvious as he clenches his fist. He admits that having to explain himself this way, especially to her, makes him feel utterly miserable. He confesses that he doesn't care if anyone else in the world misunderstands him, but he can't stand the idea of her getting the wrong impression. He then reveals the immense royal pressure he's been under his whole life. As the crown prince, he was commanded by his father to marry Elizabeth. It was a political move meant to save the empire, not a personal scheme to control a woman. His duty was to his country. Elizabeth's fortune was the key to its stability. Finally, he looks directly at Asha and gives her the answer she's been waiting for. He confirms she's right about his feelings. He makes it crystal clear that he was never drawn to Lady Knightley. Instead, his attention was always on someone else. After Eden's veiled confession, Asha met his gaze with unwavering intensity. She stated her feelings were directed at him, and they were far from simple. If it were just a casual liking or a common desire, that would be one thing, but she confirmed they were much more than that. The prince was visibly startled by her bold declaration. Sensing his hesitation, Asha pressed her advantage. If his own feelings weren't simple either, she challenged, then what would he call them? Before he could form a reply, she looked him dead in the eye and asked the ultimate question. Did he love her? The directness of her words left the usually composed crown prince stunned. His arrogant facade crumbled as he struggled for an answer. Finally, he turned away and clenched his fist, managing only a hesitant. Perhaps his mind snapped back to their dangerous reality, worrying about the consequences if the Lord of Marseille's plot came to light. The crown prince's mind races with the potential fallout. If Marseille's plot is revealed, Asha's father, Clovis Morton, will no longer be remembered as a war hero. Eden confesses he had cut the Grand Duke off earlier because he was worried Asha would be hurt by the truth. He takes her hand, his grip tightening as he struggles to voice his emotions. He admits that if he dared to express his feelings with the word love, then perhaps, but he can't bring himself to finish the sentence. Asha calmly calls out his hesitation. She asks if he's unsure, or if he's simply afraid because admitting his feelings for someone other than Elizabeth would mean disobeying the emperor. Before he can answer, she decides to take matters into her own hands. With unnerving confidence, she closes the space between them, backing the startled prince into a seat. Taking complete control, she sits on his lap and leans in. She asks if he'd like to confirm his feelings, adding that maybe they're the kind that will fade once he finally gets what he wants. The crown prince is completely flustered as Asha takes charge, leaving him stammering. Unfazed by his hesitation, she calmly states that she doesn't care whether her father is remembered as a hero. Her only true loyalty is to Elizabeth, and she believes his concerns are just an excuse. To Asha, her father's reputation means nothing compared to helping her lady achieve her goals. She leans in close, gently caressing his cheek and making the prince blush deeply. She tells him that she believes his supposed feelings are just a temporary desire that will fade away. Since she is convinced he doesn't truly love her, she makes a bold offer to satisfy his curiosity and prove her point. As the air thickens with unspoken questions, Eden finally reacts. He firmly grabs her hand, his composure breaking. In a moment of raw honesty, he admits something stunning, revealing that she is his first. This confession shatters Asha's assumptions and changes the dynamic between them completely. With a deep bow, Asha apologizes to Elizabeth for deceiving her about her family. But Elizabeth simply smiles and waves it off, telling her friend not to worry. Asha explains that the woman who helped them at the Lord's mansion was her aunt, which makes Elizabeth realize why they looked so similar. The conversation quickly returns to their plan. Asha asks if the talk with the crown prince went well. Elizabeth confirms that it did, and she has made up her mind. She agrees with the Grand Duke that the information they've uncovered must be revealed to the public. Asha considers the major consequence of this action. Her father, Clovis Morton, will lose his false title as a war hero. But her loyalty never wavers. She states firmly that the man she remembers wouldn't be ashamed to lose a fake honor. For Asha, helping Elizabeth achieve her goal is far more important than her father's reputation. Later, Elizabeth stands alone on a balcony, staring blankly at the city as the sun sets. She's so deep in thought that she doesn't notice Dave approach until he gently drapes a shawl over her shoulders against the evening chill. He asks if something is bothering her, but she initially dismisses his concern. However, her mind is heavy with guilt. Now that she understands the whole situation, she realizes that bringing Asha to this city wasn't a good thing for her friend. It dawns on Elizabeth that even the crown prince, who had only traveled with them for a few days, seemed to notice Asha's complicated feelings. She silently asks herself why she didn't realize it until now. All this time, she had claimed Asha was like a sister to her, yet she had dragged her friend along without ever considering the silent burdens she was carrying. The weight of her choices presses down on Elizabeth. Standing on the balcony, she reflects on how she stormed a castle for an animal, a move that forced Asha to reveal her most painful secrets. She feels deeply embarrassed by her own childish behavior. Asha sacrificed everything to join her on this fraudulent engagement trip, and Elizabeth had been completely oblivious to her friend's silent struggles. Sensing her troubled mood, Dave steps closer. He points toward a sparkling area across the city, explaining that a night market is open. To lift her spirits, he gently asks if she would accompany him for a while. His thoughtful gesture works. Soon, they are wandering through the lively market, the cheerful atmosphere a welcome relief. Elizabeth's smile returns as she enjoys a sweet skewer. Seeing the happiness back in her eyes, Dave asks if her treat is delicious. She turns to him, her expression bright and carefree, and offers him a bite, asking if he wants to try. In that simple moment, the weight of their world feels a little lighter. As Dave accepts the sweet skewer, Elizabeth feels the last of her worries melt away. She thinks it was a good idea to come to the market. Dave then looks at her, telling her he finds her trusting nature and strong sense of justice very lovely. He confesses that he loves every part of her. Seeing her lingering guilt, he reassures her about Asha. He suggests that her loyal maid probably feels the same way about Elizabeth and wants to protect her, so she shouldn't worry so much. As he speaks, their hands find each other and intertwine. Their quiet moment is interrupted by a cheerful flower vendor who calls Dave a handsome master and suggests he buy a bouquet. The vendor explains that in Marseilles, it's tradition for men to propose by offering woven flowers. Without missing a beat, Dave purchases one. He hands the beautiful arrangement to a stunned Elizabeth, who accepts it with a quiet thank you, completely taken aback by the gesture. As the flower vendor congratulated Dave on getting a good deal, he mentioned that intense competition was forcing all the merchants to slash their prices. That single comment completely changed the mood. Holding the woven flowers meant for a proposal, Elizabeth's mind latched onto a different opportunity. The merchant's complaints about selling off stock connected with the vendor's words, sparking a flash of inspiration. Dave noticed her sudden distraction, calling out her name in confusion. The scene shifts, and Elizabeth is no longer the dazed recipient of a romantic gesture. She's a brilliant strategist. With renewed fire, she unveils her grand plan to her allies. She declared they were going to dig a brand new canal right beside Marseilles. With a dazzling smile, she confidently announced that this one massive project would not only help her go bankrupt, but would also be the key to solving all their problems. Dave watched from behind, a look of pure admiration on his face for the incredible woman he had just proposed to. Elizabeth's ambitious plan springs into action. Workers wanted posters appear, advertising a massive canal reconstruction project with an unheard-of offer, no gender or age restrictions. The promise of steady pay draws an enormous crowd, and the site becomes a hive of activity as workers line up for their assignments. Crown Prince Eden observes the organized chaos with surprise. He asks Elizabeth where she found enough skilled construction workers for such a task. She calmly replies that they were already among the many outsiders who had gathered in the marshes, and they've found all the people they need. Eden confesses that when he first heard the idea, he thought it was completely absurd. But seeing the sheer number of people she has mobilized, he has to admit it seems possible now. Elizabeth turns to him, stating coolly that she only proposes realistic ideas. Fanning a thick wad of cash, she adds with a smirk that there's nothing money can't do. The very next day, Elizabeth's ambitious plan explodes into action. Posters advertising the second canal office appear, promising guaranteed wages to anyone willing to work, regardless of age or gender. Just as she predicted, countless unemployed citizens flock to the construction site, forming a massive workforce overnight. Crown Prince Eden observes the organized chaos with a skeptical eye. He confronts Elizabeth, declaring her idea of digging a new waterway was wrong from the start. With an arrogant smirk, he reminds her that it was he who had originally suggested repairing the old canal damaged in the bombing. Unimpressed, Elizabeth cuts him off. She clarifies the brilliant loophole in her strategy. While the imperial family guaranteed private business rights for a new canal, they never promised to leave the old, state-owned canal in ruins indefinitely, as the project was simply too expensive for them to undertake. With a confident smile, she reveals her masterstroke. An anonymous sponsor will now cover the reconstruction costs, making her the region's most important employer and rendering her enemies' plans useless. Elizabeth's plan was a resounding success. She had even called in her reporter ally, Michelle Turner, to spread the news far and wide. The newspaper headlines announcing the canal's reconstruction brought workers flocking to the site, simplifying the massive undertaking. However, this public display of power created a new problem. Crown Prince Eden grew concerned, knowing the ruthless Lord of Marshes would not take this well. He voices his worry to Elizabeth, asking if she's truly prepared for the fallout. He reminds her that the Lord is a dangerous man who will stop at nothing to get his way. But Elizabeth just smiles, completely unfazed. While Eden might be concerned, she has a secret weapon. She explains that her loyal maid Asha promised to personally handle any interference from the Lord. With unshakable confidence, Elizabeth places her full trust in her friend and bodyguard to keep their project safe from any threats. Just as Elizabeth predicted, the news of her canal project did not sit well with the Lord of Marshes. At his mansion, he slammed his fist on the table, absolutely furious. He couldn't believe that after inviting her as a guest, she'd not only escaped his knights but was now openly rebuilding the canal. He screamed at his subordinate, demanding to know how her posters were distributed everywhere. The nervous assistant explained that Elizabeth had launched a massive offensive, using her vast fortune to hire people and instantly spread the word. The Lord declared he would fight fire with fire. If she used money and people, he would do the same. With a sinister look, he ordered his man to call in the thugs, ruffians who would do anything for the right price. Shortly after, a group of imposing men arrived at the bustling construction site. One of them stepped forward with a smirk, demanding to know who gave the workers permission to cause such a commotion. The Lord of Marshes thugs arrived at the bustling construction site, but the workers refused to be intimidated. They stood their ground, insisting they had cultivation rights and were not on the Lord's property. Losing his patience, the lead thug grabbed an elderly woman, demanding she be quiet. His aggression was instantly cut short when a sharp blade pressed against his throat. A calm voice told him that was enough. It was Asha, Elizabeth's loyal maid, who warned him to back off if he valued his life. The goon just scoffed, mocking the tiny woman trying to play knight. He completely underestimated her. In response, Asha simply introduced herself as Lady Knightley's personal knight and the daughter of the legendary Clovis Morton. The thug's smug expression evaporated as a trickle of blood ran down his neck. Raising her sword, Asha repeated her warning one last time. Don't be violent and back off. The thugs froze, the name Clovis Morton echoing in their minds. They couldn't believe the daughter of the legendary frontier hero was standing before them. Trying to regain his composure, the lead goon laughed it off. He urged his men not to be afraid, boasting that she was just one person while they had overwhelming numbers. His confidence was short-lived. In an instant, a second blade pressed against his throat from the other side. Grand Duke Dave had arrived, without a sound. He gently motioned for a surprised Asha to stay quiet. The thug, feeling the cold steel, stammered, asking who this newcomer was. With a calm smile, Dave announced that he was simply following the daughter of Lord Morton, carrying on his will. The tables had turned completely. No longer dealing with a lone woman, they were now trapped between the legendary knight's daughter and the Empire's finest knight himself. Their day had just gotten a whole lot worse. With Dave's declaration echoing, the workers felt a surge of courage. This was their moment to fight back. Before the thugs could process the situation, Asha and Dave launched their attack. They moved in perfect sync, a whirlwind of coordinated strikes that left the goons completely overwhelmed. In seconds, the entire group was disarmed and on the ground, wondering what just happened. Watching the humiliating defeat from a distance, the Lord of Marshes seethed with rage. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, calling the two fighters monsters. He briefly wondered if Asha could really be Clovis Morton's daughter, but quickly dismissed it. Deciding to take matters into his own hands, he ordered his men to bring him a gun. Meanwhile, Elizabeth observed the scene with unshakable calm. Standing beside her, Crown Prince Eden noted that they had everyone's attention, especially the reporter Michelle Turner, who was capturing the whole scoop. Elizabeth simply smiled. She was certain of their victory. After all, Asha and Dave were incredibly strong. Crown Prince Eden smugly noted Elizabeth's confidence, but she couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Her instincts were right. While everyone focused on the Lord of Marshes, brandishing a firearm, a new threat emerged from the crowd. An assassin's bladed whip sliced through the air, aimed directly at Eden. Panic erupted. Eden yelled, realizing the danger too late as his men scrambled to shield him. At that exact moment, the Lord of Marshes also fired his weapon. But Asha was faster. In a breathtaking display of speed, she launched herself in front of the prince. A loud shot rang out. When the moment passed, Asha stood firm, having intercepted both the whip and the projectile meant for Eden. She was completely unfazed, leaving the crown prince staring in absolute disbelief at the woman who had just saved his life. In the aftermath of the attack, Elizabeth and Dave waited anxiously for news. When the doctor finally entered, they rushed to ask about the crown prince's condition. The doctor, who was none other than Fleming, gave them a cheerful thumbs up. He called the outcome a miracle, explaining the prince's shoulder was slightly grazed. Despite minor blood loss, he was completely fine, Fleming confidently guaranteeing no lasting effects from the injury. Elizabeth was stunned, clutching her chest in overwhelming relief. Dave, on the other hand, looked less impressed, but acknowledged the prince was safe. With her immediate fears settled, Elizabeth's thoughts turned to her loyal friend. She wondered if Asha was okay after taking the full force of both attacks. Asha is then revealed, sitting up and looking completely unfazed. She calmly mentioned this wasn't her first time dealing with a gunshot, proving her incredible resilience. Later, Elizabeth finds Crown Prince Eden recovering in his room, his shoulder freshly bandaged. He remarks smugly that the Lord of Marshes, now branded a traitor, will be easy to handle. But Elizabeth cuts straight to the point, demanding to know why he recklessly jumped in, knowing a gun was aimed in their direction. Eden looks at her, his expression softening. He gently takes her hand, confessing that his feelings for her are far from ordinary. He then poses a question that hangs in the air. What man would ever stand still when the woman he loves is in mortal danger? Elizabeth is completely taken aback by the weight of his words. Before she can process his confession, Eden pulls her closer into a surprising embrace. He notes her scolding tone and slyly suggests that instead of a rebuke, she could offer him a thank you. Leaning in, he adds that he would like it right now. With his shoulder freshly bandaged, Crown Prince Eden corners Elizabeth in his room. He leans in with a smug look, asking if it would be too much trouble for her to offer a word of thanks. Elizabeth reluctantly gives in. While she thanks him for saving her, she firmly tells him never to put himself in danger like that again. Eden immediately questions why. She suggests it's because of his important status as the Crown Prince, but he dismisses that excuse. He points out that her tone was far too insolent for someone simply worried about the heir to the throne. He moves even closer, his gaze locked on hers. He asks a sharp, direct question that cuts through her defenses. Did her feelings for him change after she saw him get hurt? His bold advance leaves Elizabeth completely flustered, with nowhere to run from the truth of her own emotions. With Elizabeth cornered and silent, the Crown Prince smirks. Judging from her reaction, he says it's clear she isn't just acting out of guilt. He presses his advantage, asking if her emotions are uncertain. He smoothly suggests that perhaps she needs an opportunity to confirm her own feelings. But Elizabeth quickly regains her composure. She looks up at him and throws his question back in his face. What if, after all this, her feelings turn out to be different from his? She asks if he wouldn't regret making such a bold move. Eden admits that he might feel some regret. However, he confidently states that a small chance is still better than no chance at all. Leaning in close, he makes it clear he isn't backing down. He softly asks what she thinks, directly questioning if she's ready to confirm her feelings for him then and there. A few days later, at the estate of the Marquis of Marseilles, Elizabeth's plans come together perfectly. The corrupt Marquis is on his knees, pleading for mercy, as he is taken away by the authorities. Watching this unfold, Elizabeth feels a wave of relief and satisfaction wash over her. It's a refreshing and well-earned victory. Her attention then turns to a young boy from the circus who approaches with a baby elephant. He bows deeply, sincerely thanking her for her help. The boy thinks to himself that he never realized how remarkable his sister was until now. Another child happily adds that the Crown Prince issued an order to protect the elephants, ensuring their safety. As if the day couldn't get any better, Julia approaches Elizabeth with more good news. She reports that the construction of the canal is also proceeding smoothly. Everything is finally falling into place, marking a major turning point in their fight for justice. As Elizabeth takes in her victory, a local woman approaches. She explains that when the borders became desolate, many people were forced to move to Marseilles. But now, thanks to the new canal, she can finally start thinking about a way to return home. Observing this, Dave smiles with pride. He later joins Elizabeth, who playfully wonders if it's fate that incidents happen wherever she goes, or if they just happen to pick troubled places. Dave chuckles, replying that since she's always the one solving everything, it doesn't really matter. He teases that this feels less like an engagement trip and more like the adventures of Elizabeth, the problem solver. His expression then turns serious as he asks if she had a good talk with Asha. Elizabeth confirms she did, specifying that they talked about the feelings between Asha and the Crown Prince. She explains that while her loyal maid was flustered, Elizabeth truly doesn't mind the situation at all. Taking Asha's hand, Elizabeth offers her loyal friend complete reassurance, explaining that the Crown Prince has never registered as a potential partner in her eyes. He is simply not her type. With a warm smile, she adds that her only real wish is for both of them to find a way to marry the person they truly love. Later, Dave finds Elizabeth and smirks, playfully asking if she has any regrets about so boldly throwing away the prestigious title of Crown Princess. Elizabeth doesn't hesitate for a second. With a look of pure determination, she walks right up to him and states firmly, "Not at all." She then reaches for the locket he always wears and gently flips it open, revealing a treasured photograph of them as children. Looking deeply into his eyes, she finally confesses that from the very first moment they met, she knew he was the one she wanted to marry. An imperial decree rings out, officially exposing the Lord of Marseilles. For over a decade, he faked a rebellion to cheat the imperial family and steal from his people. His gravest crime, however, was a failed attempt on Crown Prince Eden's life. The Emperor's judgment is absolute. The corrupt lord and his men are to be executed. As justice is served, the crowd roars with approval, hailing Elizabeth, Dave, and the prince as their saviors. Later, Elizabeth is beaming with excitement. She shows Asha a newspaper headline that praises her as the hero of Marseilles, the daughter of a legendary knight. She playfully suggests that if Asha becomes a national hero, the emperor himself might consider her a worthy match for his son. Asha isn't so sure, reminding her that the class divide is a difficult barrier to overcome. When she asks if Elizabeth truly wishes for her to be with Eden, she gives a firm and enthusiastic yes. Elizabeth considers her friend's words. While she admits the Crown Prince is incredibly annoying and sometimes makes her want to punch him, she agrees that deep down he isn't a bad person. Taking Asha's hand, she says that all she truly wants is for Asha to be happy, because she is her precious friend and family. Moved by this, Asha gratefully accepts her lady's intentions. But just as quickly, her demeanor shifts. She notices that the Emperor's investigators are still in Marseilles, and it strikes her as odd. If they were only here to handle the corrupt lord, they would have left by now. She realizes they've been subtly monitoring both Elizabeth and the Crown Prince. This feels ominous to Asha. Combined with Uncle Ronald's suspicious silence, she can't help but wonder what's happening back in the capital. Meanwhile, a man bursts into the Prime Minister's office. He asks if His Excellency has heard the news. The Prime Minister, revealed to be Uncle Ronald, holds the newspaper and asks coolly if his niece was responsible. In his lavish office, the Prime Minister of the Orvia Empire, Duke Miles Zavalt, smirks over the report. He comments on how bold Elizabeth is to interfere with his work to this extent. This sends Uncle Ronald into a panic. He desperately points out to the Duke that he's not like his stubborn brother and that the Duke himself once wished for a more reasonable head of the knightly family. Ronald pleads that he put his trust in the Prime Minister, but now his niece is threatening to take everything away from him. The Prime Minister's friendly facade vanishes. He coldly asks if Ronald is blaming him for his brother's demise. He clarifies that he never ordered such an act. He only expressed frustration that Elizabeth's father, a powerful noble, constantly advocated to end the war, getting in his way. With a final, dismissive jab, the Duke reminds Ronald that despite everything, he still failed to become the rightful heir. Uncle Ronald continues his desperate plea to Prime Minister Zavalt. He confesses that he originally planned for Elizabeth to be in the carriage accident with her parents, but her last-minute decision to stay home ruined his plan. The Duke is completely unimpressed, calling Ronald sloppy. He reveals a key detail. There's a witness who saw Ronald heading to the carriage that fateful night. The Prime Minister points out that with the Emperor's investigators watching, Ronald can't make a move on his niece, especially while she's protected by Dave and the Crown Prince. This is exactly why Ronald came begging for help. The Duke smirks, seeing his chance, and asks what Ronald can offer him. He makes his demand clear: half of the knightly family's assets in exchange for dealing with Elizabeth. The choice is simple: lose everything or keep half. Once Ronald agrees to the dark deal, the Duke summons a cloaked figure. He gives a chilling order: find Elizabeth and end her life immediately. With the dark deal sealed, a cloaked figure materializes in the room. The Prime Minister explains this is his personal specialist, a fierce dog he's carefully trained for one purpose: to eliminate his problems. The Duke boasts that this isn't just any assassin. At only 15, he managed to get past the Empire's tightest security and was responsible for the tragic end of the former Grand Duchess, Dave's own mother. The Duke is certain this expert will not fail to handle Elizabeth. Meanwhile, a different kind of drama unfolds for Elizabeth and Dave. An Imperial messenger suddenly arrives, cutting their conversation short. Annoyed by the intrusion, Dave questions if the Emperor is sending a marriage proposal. The messenger dismisses any complaints about proper etiquette, declaring that the Imperial family is the exception to all rules. He then delivers the stunning royal command directly to Elizabeth. She has been ordered to marry Crown Prince Eden Orvia. She can only stand there, completely shocked. The Imperial messenger is furious, accusing Grand Duke Dave of insubordination for questioning a royal command. But Dave remains perfectly calm. He states that a true knight's duty is to disobey an unjust order, then coolly explains that the Emperor seems to have forgotten the imperial succession law. According to this old law, an heiress like Elizabeth must marry a spouse designated by her family's senate within a 1-year grace period. Since her parents have passed, that authority belongs to the knightly senate, not the Emperor. The messenger can't believe the audacity, arguing that any family would be honored to have their daughter become crown princess. Just as he calls Elizabeth's hesitation an act of disloyalty, Crown Prince Eden himself arrives. Eden cuts the messenger off, surprisingly agreeing with Dave. He declares that the imperial family must strictly follow the laws, especially concerning a royal marriage, then takes control, telling the messenger he will handle his own affairs and to relay that message to the Emperor. The imperial messenger tries to protest, but Crown Prince Eden has no time for it. He coldly tells the man he isn't backing down and orders him to leave immediately. A flash of power from the prince sends the flustered messenger running. With the man gone, Eden turns to his aide with a smirk, sarcastically questioning if forcing a national hero into marriage is really a reward. His aide asks if the Grand Duke has considered the consequences of defying the Emperor. Eden laughs it off, asking if he would support Dave if Eden were deposed. He then scoffs at the idea, wondering aloud why he would ever support his perfectly capable older cousin. His true intentions are clearly something else entirely. Seeing the prince approach, Asha puts a protective hand on Ellie's shoulder. But instead of being confrontational, Eden stops before them and bows his head. He offers a sincere apology on behalf of the imperial family for the discourtesy and also for his past behavior at the Visconti wedding. Ellie calmly accepts, stating that what's past is past, acknowledging he was acting under imperial orders for the country's sake. With the matter of the proposal settled, Crown Prince Eden makes a shocking confession. He explains that he must truly apologize because he has fallen in love with another woman and asks Elizabeth to consider his marriage offer null and void. The woman he loves is someone she knows very well. His gaze shifts pointedly toward Asha, causing a moment of stunned silence from the entire group. Eden admits his feelings are one-sided for now, but vows to convince his father, the Emperor, somehow. He warns them that the Emperor is a stubborn man and won't give up on the marriage alliance easily. The next attempt will likely be backed by the knightly Senate's consent, making it harder to refuse. Therefore, Eden advises them to leave for Marseilles immediately. Ellie questions if he's telling them to run away again. Stepping forward, Dave calmly confirms it, noting it's what they're used to. With their next move decided, Dave lays out the plan. He suggests they take the longest possible route to Marseilles, creating the illusion they're heading for the capital on a slow journey. Elizabeth agrees, stating she'll be ready to leave by morning. She then turns to a quiet Dave, telling him to go to his room. He doesn't move, staring off into the distance. She asks what's on his mind, but before he can answer, she gets a strange feeling they're being watched. They glance toward the window, though they aren't on the ground floor. Dave calmly dismisses it as an overreaction, guessing the Imperial delegation might still be lingering nearby. Outside, however, a cloaked figure watches them with intense focus. Later that night, the two share an intimate moment. Lying together, Elizabeth breaks the silence, her mind on the day's events. She points out that even Crown Prince Eden was concerned about being deposed for refusing the Emperor. Looking at Dave seriously, she asks what he was truly thinking when he so boldly defied the Imperial order. Elizabeth voices her deepest fears, pointing out that if the Emperor can be so cruel to his own son, he would surely be worse to his nephew. She grabs Dave's shirt, asking if he isn't afraid of being dragged away or even executed for defying a direct order. In response, Dave simply pulls her into a warm embrace, asking if that's what she's worried about. He admits the Emperor is a ruthless man. A painful memory flashes through his mind. A young Dave standing alone at his parents' funeral, forced to watch as the Imperial family asserted their power. He explains that they have already taken so much from him over the years. Holding her tighter, Dave confesses that Elizabeth is the last person he is left to protect, explaining he disobeyed the Emperor because he could never hand her over. Moved by his words, Elizabeth whispers his name. The two share a look, and it's clear their bond has reached a new, much deeper level. The next morning, the carriage is ready for their journey. Asha stands outside, looking around with a sense of unease. She never dreamed she and Elizabeth would get separated so quickly. Just then, Grand Duke Dave arrives, asking what's wrong. Asha tells him that Elizabeth finished her preparations long ago and should be at the carriage, but she's nowhere to be found. As they exchange a worried look, Crown Prince Eden approaches them, asking about Lady Knightley. When he confirms he hasn't seen her, their unease deepens. Meanwhile, inside a different carriage, Elizabeth slowly regains consciousness. Disoriented, she tries to figure out where she is. She's on the floor, the carriage rattling beneath her. Looking up, she's met with the sight of a mysterious man in a dark cloak. With a confident smirk, he casually asks if she's finally awake. Elizabeth has been taken. The carriage rattles violently, startling Elizabeth. Before she can even react, her cloaked captor silences her with a hand over her mouth. He gets straight to the point, asking why she's pretending not to know what he wants. He's looking for the Knightley family seal ring, the one her Uncle Ronald is supposed to have. He heard she fled with it, but after a thorough search while she was unconscious, he came up empty. Elizabeth is horrified, realizing the man went through her belongings and even searched her person. Ignoring her shock, he demands an answer. Internally, Elizabeth feels a surge of relief. Fearing exactly this kind of situation, she had already entrusted the ring to Asha for safekeeping. That one clever move has bought her some precious time. She is confident Dave and Asha will come for her. Noticing her defiant silence, the man's patience snaps. He grabs her, warning her not to try any tricks. He makes it clear they are far from any help and that her survival depends on her cooperation. All he wants to know is where she put the ring. With her life on the line, Elizabeth glares back at her captor. The man presses a cold blade to her skin, promising a quick end if she cooperates. She refuses to break, coldly stating that she hid the ring where he'll never find it if he gets rid of her, and she won't meet her end in a place like this. Cutting to the chase, she asks if Uncle Ronald sent him. Her captor's grip tightens, But Elizabeth changes tactics. Pretending to be weak, she complains that she feels faint. The moment he hesitates, she seizes his wrist, her expression hardening. She tells him that whatever reward he was promised, she has a better offer. With a confident smirk, she proposes he switch sides. The man is stunned, asking if she understands what she's suggesting. Her smile widens. She knows exactly what she's saying. After all, she's the wealthiest person on the entire continent, and she's not afraid to use it. Elizabeth lays out a business proposal. Whatever her uncle offered, she'll triple it. With a confident smile, she asks why he would hesitate when gold is gold, no matter the source. Her captor is taken aback. He expected a naive, scared girl, but instead finds a woman who doesn't even flinch with a blade at her throat. He underestimated her. A knightly is still a knightly. Annoyed by her composure, he presses the blade closer, asking what she would do if his motive wasn't money. He suggests it could be revenge against her family. Elizabeth calmly concedes that she can't argue with revenge. But if it's not about money or resentment, she can't think of another reason for his actions. She then turns the tables, asking him directly what he truly kills for. The man pauses, genuinely considering her question. The captor's patience runs out. Instead of answering her question, he raises his blade to finish the job for good. But before he can strike, the carriage door is violently ripped from its hinges. Grand Duke Dave is there, his expression pure rage as he yells Elizabeth's name. Close behind, a frantic Asha races on horseback, screaming for her lady. Realizing he's been caught, the assassin curses his pursuers and makes a final, desperate move. He shoves Elizabeth out of the speeding carriage. The situation spirals as Asha spots the driverless carriage heading straight for a cliff. As Elizabeth tumbles through the air, Dave leaps from his own horse, without a second thought. He tells her to hold on, catching her mid-fall and cradling her tight just as the empty carriage plunges into the abyss below. Landing safely, Dave holds a stunned Elizabeth in his arms. Asha rushes to their side, asking if she's all right. Elizabeth looks up at her rescuer, safe in his protective embrace. Safe in Dave's arms, Elizabeth wonders how he and Asha found her so quickly. The shock wears off, and she admits how terrified she was. Dave gently reassures her, explaining their rescue was thanks to a special medicine from Fleming. The reagent leaves a strong scent on a person that can be tracked for up to 10 days. He then reveals a less than charming detail. According to Fleming, the medicine smells absolutely terrible. Immediately concerned, Elizabeth asks Dave if she stinks. After a slight pause, he clarifies that a dog did the tracking, since the distance was too far for a human nose. Realizing she's in an unfamiliar place, Elizabeth asks where they are. Dave points toward a city in the distance. He tells her it's Bath, their next destination, and a famous hot spring city known as a popular spot for honeymoons. Arriving in the hot spring city of Bath, Elizabeth takes in the bustling streets with excitement. She tells Asha that she's heard the name many times, but has never visited. Dave joins them, explaining that it's no surprise, as the springs were only discovered a decade ago. He remarks on how a simple farming village was impressively transformed into a lover's paradise. Their conversation is cut short when Dave's attention shifts to a figure lagging behind them. He calls out to Crown Prince Eden, asking him how long he plans on embarrassing himself. Indignant, Eden complains that while Dave and Asha chased after Elizabeth on horseback, he had to follow in a rough carriage. He calls his journey a noble sacrifice for a woman's safety. Before he can continue his dramatic rant, one of Dave's men puts him in his place. Looking back at Elizabeth, Dave sighs. It seems their relaxing honeymoon trip won't be so peaceful after all. Asha approaches Elizabeth with a serious update. The team sent to investigate the crashed carriage found nothing. The kidnapper had completely vanished. Since Bath was the only city reachable from the crash site in a day, Asha warns that their enemy will surely try to make another move. She advises Elizabeth to stay close to her or Dave for safety. Whispering, she also tells her to keep the signet ring hidden and not show it to anyone for the time being. Meanwhile, Crown Prince Eden stretches and declares they'll have to rest for a couple of days since all the horses are exhausted. Dave immediately calls him out, bluntly asking if he's just using the horses as an excuse for himself to rest. As the two royals bicker, Asha ignores them and considers their next steps. For security, they need the best possible hotel, but it's peak season. Suddenly, Asha notices Elizabeth has been staring at something. Elizabeth points toward a massive, luxurious hotel. A person stands on its roof, and she wonders what they're doing. The group looks up at the hotel, where a dramatic scene is unfolding. A furious older man on the street shouts at the figure on the roof, demanding he come down. Defiantly, the young man yells back that he won't move until his father approves his marriage. The father scoffs, enraged that his son, the heir to countless hotels in Bath, would dare to love such a common woman. Losing all patience, he tells his son to just jump if he won't listen, declaring he would rather have no son at all. Heartbroken, the young man apologizes to someone named Rince for leaving her alone. Down below, Elizabeth and her companions are completely baffled by the odd name. Suddenly, the man spreads his arms wide and shouts his goodbyes to the world. The crowd gasps. Elizabeth and the prince exchange horrified looks. They had assumed it was street theater, but now they see there are no safety ropes. The man is genuinely about to jump. The young man's foot slips off the ledge, and he begins to fall. Panicked, Crown Prince Eden yells at Dave, demanding he do something since a man is about to meet his end right in front of them. Before anyone can react, Dave moves in a blur. With incredible speed, he launches himself forward, catching the man midair and landing gracefully on the ground. The crowd erupts in applause, completely stunned by the Grand Duke's superhuman feat. Elizabeth and the prince watch in awe as Dave casually holds the unconscious man, wondering why he always has to deal with such dramatic people. Later, the man rests safely in a hotel bed. A woman with kind eyes bows deeply, thanking them profusely for saving him. It turns out this is Rince, the hotel's owner and the woman he was willing to give everything up for. Dave humbly replies that he only did what was natural. Elizabeth, however, can't help but be amused, realizing that the odd name Rince was real after all. The recent assassination attempt is still fresh in his mind. Their enemies are after Elizabeth's fortune, symbolized by her signet ring, and they won't stop hunting her. He realizes this old, out-of-the-way hotel is the perfect hideout. No one would think to look for the famously wealthy heiress in such a modest place, especially since it's temporarily closed to other guests. There's no risk of their location being leaked. Seeing the strategic advantage, Elizabeth gracefully accepts the owner's kindness. She then makes a special request, asking Rince to keep their stay an absolute secret. Without hesitation, Rince agrees. She understands they have their reasons and, as her saviors, she will ensure their privacy by providing them with a private entrance. Inside their new private room, Elizabeth collapses onto the bed, finally feeling a wave of relief. She reflects that their good deed was rewarded with this perfect, secure hideout. Asha explores the suite, pleasantly surprised by how nice and well-stocked it is for a closed establishment. Elizabeth agrees, noting the place is clearly well-managed. This makes her wonder why such a great hotel would suddenly suspend business, especially with the city being so crowded. Before they can discuss it, their host, Rince, arrives with a cart of food. She explains that since her dining staff quit, she prepared the meal herself. As Elizabeth glances toward the window, Rince offers another piece of good news. The glass reflects light, making it difficult for anyone outside to see in. Their secret safe house was turning out to be even better than they had hoped, providing both comfort and security against their pursuers. As Elizabeth takes in the room, she notices the absence of a reception desk or any staff. She asks Rince if she's running the entire hotel by herself. With a hint of sadness, Rince explains that it wasn't always like this. The hotel used to be the highest-rated establishment in the city, complete with a full staff. When Asha asks how such a popular hotel could go out of business, Rince simply claims she lacked talent as a manager. After she leaves them to enjoy their meal, Asha immediately voices her suspicions. She whispers to Elizabeth that there's no way it's that simple. There has to be a bigger story behind the hotel's fall from grace. After a fantastic dinner and a relaxing visit to the city's famous hot springs, Elizabeth feels completely refreshed. As Asha helps her try on a new boa, Elizabeth privately considers their next move. They need to restock on supplies and change horses before leaving, but the thought of going out in public makes her uneasy. Her thoughts are interrupted by a frantic man running down the hall. He shouts that they've arrived just in time because Grand Duke Dave has gone completely crazy. Elizabeth and Asha turn to see Dave standing calmly beside a clearly irritated Crown Prince Eden. Confused, Elizabeth asks what kind of proposal Dave made. The Grand Duke explains his plan is perfectly reasonable. Since it's too dangerous for Elizabeth to be seen in the city, he and Crown Prince Eden will go get the supplies themselves. This protective suggestion, however, seems to have seriously offended the prince's royal pride. Crown Prince Eden is absolutely fuming. He yells that it's not that he refuses to go to the city, it's that Dave conveniently left out a crucial part of the plan. As Elizabeth and Asha look on, confused, Eden reveals the Grand Duke's ridiculous proposal. He wants the Crown Prince to cross-dress. Dave calmly holds up a long orange wig, confirming Eden's accusation. He then explains their real problem. They need to visit a bank, but the Knightley family's assets are completely frozen. The funds can only be withdrawn by a family member in person, or by someone with a special Senate signet ring. Since Elizabeth can't be seen, Dave's master plan is for Eden to go in her place. The prince flatly refuses, arguing that no one would mistake him for a lady just because he's wearing a wig. Before the argument can continue, a panic shout comes from downstairs. It's Rince, the hotel manager, accusing them of selling the hotel, leaving everyone stunned by the sudden turn of events. As Elizabeth and her group walk through the hotel, they stop at the top of a grand staircase, drawn by voices from below. The manager, Rince, is in a quiet but desperate conversation. She confesses that she loves running the hotel, but she can't keep it going by herself much longer. The root of her problem is her own father. His toxic influence prevents her from hiring staff and scares away any new guests. Feeling defeated, she believes there's no point in keeping the failing hotel open anymore. Just then, Rince looks up and sees them listening. Elizabeth quickly apologizes for eavesdropping, but the embarrassed manager insists it was her fault for being so loud. The man with Rince then steps forward. He explains he heard the people who saved him were staying here for the day. He bows deeply, offering his sincere gratitude. The man with Rince expresses his deep gratitude, but Crown Prince Eden notes that his family situation seems quite complicated. With a heavy sigh, he agrees and asks if they would be willing to listen to his troubles. He suggests they move from the lobby, offering to serve tea while he tells his long story. Once they are settled, he begins to explain the town's history. He reveals that just over a decade ago, Bath was a small, unknown village. Everything changed when hot springs were discovered, transforming the area into a bustling tourist destination. His father, a wealthy and shrewd businessman from a nearby city, had a genius for spotting opportunity. He invested heavily in Bath, focusing on the hotel industry to capitalize on the flood of new visitors. Business was booming for a while, especially as the town became a popular destination for honeymooning couples, laying the foundation for the hotel that was now in jeopardy. The man continued his story, explaining that his father's hotels were always fully booked. But for the ambitious businessman, that wasn't nearly enough. Convinced he could learn more from his rivals, he ordered his son on a mission of corporate espionage. The son's task was to pose as a guest at the competing hotel, the very one they were in now, and learn all of its business secrets. However, the plan fell apart the moment he arrived. He saw the owner, Rince, tending to her garden and was immediately captivated. He went from being a spy to a man completely in love. Soon after, he stood before his father and declared his intention to marry Rince. His father fiercely objected to the idea, but the son, utterly smitten, refused to change his mind. He finishes his story with a grim look, stating that his defiance pushed his father to use extreme and underhanded methods to get what he wanted. Crown Prince Eden presses for details, asking what exactly these extreme methods were. The man explains that his father launched a full-blown attack on the hotel. He hired people to spread malicious rumors and publish slander in the daily papers to tarnish Rince's reputation. To cripple the business from the inside, he even poached her employees by offering them significantly more money, causing a mass walkout. Dave observes that it sounds like the father was hell-bent on making the hotel fail. The man sadly agrees, but reaffirms that his love for Rince is sincere, and he has no intention of leaving her. This leaves Elizabeth completely puzzled. She asks why his father would be so against the marriage. After all, Rince is a diligent young lady with a wonderful hotel. Bringing her into the family seems like a great business move. The man hesitates before revealing the bizarre reason. Rince's parents aren't locals. Elizabeth is baffled by this logic, pointing out that his father isn't from Bath, either. Elizabeth continues to question the bizarre logic, but Asha gently corrects her, explaining that she's missing the real issue. The comment makes Elizabeth pause and think back. She remembers hearing Rince speak earlier in the day, and it suddenly clicks. Her accent was familiar. Putting the pieces together, she asks if Rince is from the Orvian Empire. Eden is just as confused, questioning why her origin would matter so much when she's already part of the community. But Rince's lover somberly states that the issue is far more complicated than that. The room falls silent until Asha speaks up, her expression grim. She reveals that a similar situation once happened in Marseilles. Walking towards a large painting, she explains the harsh reality. In the Orvian Empire, being from the borderlands isn't just about where you were born. It's a deeply rooted stigma, a label that brings nothing but trouble from the Empire's elite. Asha begins to lay out the dark history of the Orvian Empire. It became the sole hegemon of the continent through brutal conquest, destroying several nations to seize power. After the wars, some of the fallen nations were integrated into the empire, but others continued to fight for their independence. These resistant regions were labeled the borderlands. Asha states plainly that this is just a fancy name for colony. The empire oppresses the people there without ever officially making them citizens. To crush any chance of an uprising, a strict law forbids the formation of any armed groups. The slightest hint of a militia is treated as a rebellion, and the subjugation army is sent in immediately. This policy has left the borderlands in complete chaos. With no way to systematically defend themselves, the villagers are helpless against raids from bandits or attacks from wild beasts. Their supposed protectors are actually their oppressors. This was because imperial propaganda relentlessly portrayed borderlanders as violent and barbaric. This stigma led to constant mistreatment. They were denied jobs, refused service at shops, and subjected to insults. Asha outlined their stark reality. Their only chance was to completely hide their accent and background. If they couldn't, they were pushed toward a life of crime or destitution. Prince Eden's fist tightened in anger. He found the situation absurd, declaring that under imperial law, borderlanders were citizens, and such discrimination was strictly forbidden. Asha calmly agreed that it was illegal, but she delivered the cold truth. The law meant nothing. The prejudice was an open secret, a powerful tool used by the very nobles who profited from the war to maintain their control and keep the borderlanders suppressed. Prince Eden's anger simmered. The conversation connected he hadn't seen before, reminding him how the Lord in Marseilles had corruptly acquired the canal monopoly. Grand Duke Dave simply confirmed that what the prince saw was, in fact, the truth of their empire. The focus then shifted to another couple in the room, Giulia Visconti and her partner. Giulia explained the source of her troubles, revealing that her beloved was from the borderlands. This was the sole reason her father so fiercely opposed their marriage. But her partner refused to be broken. He clutched his shirt with determination, stating he would never give up on their future. He was going to be happy with her no matter what. Elizabeth was touched by his heartfelt declaration. She thanked him for sharing his difficult story. Though she and her allies were only staying for a day or two, she promised to think about what they could do to help. With the conversation concluded, Dave suggested it was time for them to head up. Later that night, Asha woke up feeling thirsty. She glanced at the peacefully sleeping Elizabeth and decided to slip out for some water, reasoning that her lady would be perfectly safe with the Crown Prince's room right across the hall. Holding a candle, she stepped out onto the quiet, moonlit balcony. To her surprise, Prince Eden was already there, staring into the night. He turned and asked why she was still awake before announcing that he had made a decision. Thinking he was making another romantic advance, Asha immediately cut him off, clearly stating she had no interest. But Eden simply said he couldn't sleep and told her not to worry. He then steered the conversation in a different direction. He admitted that hearing the heavy stories about the Empire's prejudice against the Borderlanders had given him a lot to think about. It was clear the day's revelations had struck a nerve with the otherwise smug prince. Asha told the prince that he really had no reason to like her. On the contrary, she thought she'd be lucky if he didn't hate her. Setting her candle down with a soft click, she got straight to the point. She hated His Highness. Asha explained that just because there's a spark between people doesn't mean they can actually be together. She used his own situation as an example, asking if he didn't propose to Elizabeth because he loved her. She reminded him that for someone of his rank, relationships are always tangled in complications. Looking weary, the prince simply acknowledged that he knew. Asha pleaded with him to stop having unnecessary thoughts, but he suddenly grabbed her hand. He pulled her in, and the tense conversation was replaced by an unexpected kiss. As he held her close, he asked if she ever felt unsatisfied with their current dynamic. Trying to regain her composure, Asha pushes back slightly, whispering frantically that their rooms are too close. She warns him that if they aren't careful, everyone will hear them. But Prince Eden is completely unfazed by her panic. With a calm confidence, he simply suggests they can move to a different location if she's so worried about being discovered. Asha quickly rejects the idea, arguing that they are staying as guests and can't just disrespect their host by using another room. Eden leans in, a smug grin playing on his lips. He points out that while she's given him a list of reasons why they shouldn't be together, she has yet to say she doesn't want it. Her arguments crumble under his observation. Staring back at him, Asha's tough exterior finally cracks as she admits the truth to herself. Against all reason, she does want him. The following morning, Elizabeth is waiting with a suspicious glare. She comments on someone sneaking out and only just returning at dawn. Wasting no time, she confronts a flustered Asha, demanding to know what happened with the crown prince. Trying to regain her professional composure, Asha simply responds with a firm no comment. This answer doesn't sit well with Elizabeth. With a determined look, she makes it clear that she is absolutely not letting this go. As Olga chats with the maid, she can't help but let out an excited squeal. She promises that when the prince returns, she'll make him treat Asha well. From a balcony above, Elizabeth hears the scream and wonders what all the fuss is about. Her attention is quickly drawn to a real crisis unfolding in the street below. Julia's lover is being forcibly dragged away by two men. He struggles, demanding they let him go and accusing his father of sending them. Panicked, Julia runs toward him, crying out his name. One of the goons grabs her and raises his hand, ready to hit her for getting involved. Before his hand can connect, a fist slams into his face, sending him stumbling back. In the chaos, Julia falls to the ground. She looks up in shock as the fight continues, calling out for her lover, completely overwhelmed by the sudden violence. The street brawl erupts. Just as the thug raises a hand to strike Julia, Asha leaps into action with the skill of a legendary knight's daughter. A single, powerful punch connects, sending the man flying onto the pavement. The chaos ends as quickly as it began. Elizabeth rushes to the scene, calling out Asha's name in a mix of shock and concern. Asha immediately turns to her lady, apologizing for getting involved. She explains that she couldn't just stand by while Julia was in danger. A shaken but grateful Julia takes Asha's hand, thanking her for her bravery. The defeated goon struggles to his feet, deciding to retreat for the time being. With the immediate threat gone, Asha assesses the situation, telling the group they must first think of a way to get through this crisis. Elizabeth crosses her arms, her face set with grim determination. Their plans had just been thrown into disarray, and now they needed a new one. As the group steps out of a grocery store, Crown Prince Eden smirks, declaring he knew their disguises wouldn't fool anyone. To prove his point, he yanks on Elizabeth's hair, pulling off a bright orange wig. Elizabeth admits it was just a test on the clerk, but she concedes that the plan is a failure. Eden dramatically collapses, ranting that there's no way this will work. He argues that the Knightley family is too famous, and their portraits are everywhere. Plus, they'd eventually have to reveal his identity as the Crown Prince, which would be a major blow to the imperial family's prestige. Unimpressed, Dave cuts him off, stating that the royal family's reputation isn't his problem. He casually points to his own ear and mentions something about a jianjiang. The effect is immediate. Eden freezes, his face turning a deep shade of red in utter embarrassment. Having completely won the argument, Dave calmly points toward a building down the street, noting that they've arrived at the post office. Outside the post office, Crown Prince Eden pulls out an important-looking letter confirming to his aide he has business to attend to. The letter, sealed for the Emperor, is part of a new plan. Eden knows he has to make his intentions crystal clear, otherwise his father will try to force a political marriage between him and Elizabeth. He resolves that it's far better for him to be seen as a rebellious son than for Elizabeth to be branded a traitor for breaking a royal engagement. Then, a sly look crosses his face. He adds that he also needs to give the Emperor a heads up about Asha Morton. The aide is stunned, immediately bringing up the prince's famous one-sided crush and asking if something has finally happened between them. Completely flustered, Eden turns bright red. He grabs his aide, yelling at him to be quiet and mind his own business as the two begin to bicker. While the royals bicker, a far more serious threat is closing in. Elsewhere in the city, a mysterious man in a dark cloak watches the crowds. He'd been hunting for Elizabeth's group, assuming a grand entourage of noble ladies would be easy to find at an expensive hotel. But they never showed. Now, he has a new strategy. Waiting at the carriage storage, certain they'll eventually have to appear. This man is no stranger to such missions. A grim memory flashes back, a carriage careening off a cliff, a tragedy he likely orchestrated. Examining a broken piece of the wreckage, he was a cold professional analyzing his work. He doesn't waste time on morals, he just gets the job done. This hunter is patient, and with his new trap set, he knows it's only a matter of when, not if, he'll find his prey. The cloaked assassin touches his chest, confident that once he locates his targets, he'll succeed. He then reconsiders his mission. The first priority isn't the target herself, but securing the signet ring. Only after that can he complete his grim task. This man is a professional who has overseen countless final moments. He reflects on how his past victims always reacted the same way, with fear, useless pleas for mercy, or futile struggles that ended in a messy scene. However, Elizabeth was different. A memory flashes back to a tense confrontation where he held a blade to her throat. Instead of panicking, she had coolly asked him why his motives even mattered when the outcome seemed certain. This woman was calm, a reaction he had never encountered before. Her complete lack of fear in a perilous situation left a lasting impression on him, marking her as a very strange and unpredictable target. As Grand Duke Dave made his way through the city, a sudden shout cut through the crowd. He heard a struggle and turned to see a shocking sight: Elizabeth being grabbed and held against her will by two unfamiliar men. Frozen in confusion, Dave watched from a distance as one of the men questioned who she was. His partner quickly explained that she was with the owner of that ruined hotel, so they decided to bring her in for questioning. That single comment set Elizabeth off. She exploded with righteous anger, telling them not to dare call it a ruined hotel. She then fiercely accused them of being the ones who had disrupted their business in the first place. Hidden from view, Dave leaned against a wall, completely baffled. He couldn't make sense of the scene, but he knew one thing for sure. Elizabeth was in some kind of serious trouble, and this was far more complicated than a simple misunderstanding. Elizabeth stood confidently, arms crossed, as she listened in from outside the room. She could hear the panicked voices of the men who had grabbed her. One of them confirmed he had gone to the bank. There was no mistake that she was the rightful heir of the Knightley family. The others fretted, calling themselves idiots for picking a fight with a noble and wondering why she'd be staying in a ruined hotel. A knowing smirk touched Elizabeth's lips. She thought to herself that villains were always the same. The situation was quickly resolved. Inside, the troublemakers were tied up on the floor. Elizabeth's friend Julia approached her, apologizing for dragging her into the mess. Elizabeth simply took her hand and reassured her that it was all right. She promised that they would handle everything together. With her allies by her side, Elizabeth looked ahead, ready to take the next step in her plan to reclaim what was stolen from her friend. Her words were met with disbelief. The man scoffed, finding it ridiculous that a high-ranking noble would ignore the city's luxury hotels to stay in such a shabby place. But Elizabeth was ready for their doubt. She sharply pointed at the man and challenged him to verify her identity. There was a large bank branch nearby, and she knew they would have portraits of the Knightley family. With unwavering confidence, she told him to go and see the truth. Asha looked on, her face etched with worry, but Elizabeth was completely calm. With a confident smile, she reassured her maid that everything would be fine. She knew their boss was a businessman. Now that her powerful family name was in play, he wouldn't dare act recklessly. Elizabeth then gave Asha her instructions. She was to stay behind, explain the entire situation to Dave and the Crown Prince, and make sure they came to her rescue. Trusting her own plan, Elizabeth allowed herself to be escorted into a room, only for the door to be locked behind her. She wryly noted how she was already getting used to being confined. Before she could react, a figure grabbed her from behind, pulling her straight out of a window. She landed gracefully on her feet outside, standing firm. This was a new Elizabeth, no longer her former self. But her brief moment of resolve was cut short. A man in a sharp red uniform suddenly appeared before her. A flash of recognition hit her, and she pointed, shouting that he was an assassin. She tried to scream for help, but he was too fast. He lunged forward, swiftly covering her mouth to stifle the sound. Back in the garden, the man had Elizabeth in his grip. He coldly ordered her not to raise her voice and to only answer his questions. His hand tightened on her collar as he demanded to know the location of a seal. A frantic search of her person revealed nothing, and his calm demeanor shattered. With a furious look, he declared that the seal wasn't there. Furious that she doesn't have the seal, the assassin glares down at Elizabeth. But instead of cowering, she meets his anger with a fierce warning of her own. She points directly at him, declaring that if he hurts her, he will spend the rest of his life searching for it in vain. Her sheer boldness catches the assassin completely off guard. He can only stare in disbelief. The assassin simply smirks, suddenly changing his entire approach. He offers her a choice: work for him, and he'll pay her 10 times more than what she's currently getting, asking if she truly believes he's only motivated by money. His reasons, he implies, are far more complicated. We are introduced to a young man named Balin, the son of Miles Xavalt. His father is a man of immense power, serving as chancellor, head of the House of Nobles, and the leader of the insidious warmongers. Though Balin should have been heir to a ducal family, he was never given the family name. The chancellor didn't raise him as a son, but rather as a tool. This cruel treatment was likely because Balin was not born from a lawful marriage. One day, the chancellor approaches him in the training yard with a smug look. He asks how the training is going, but Balin just stares back with a cold expression. The Chancellor then brings up his own legitimate son, admitting the boy is neither smart nor capable. While cleaning his sword, Balin finally speaks, asking his father why he chose such an unimpressive heir. The Chancellor's smile widens as he mockingly asks if Balin is perhaps dissatisfied with his current station. The Chancellor's smile never falters as he tells Balin that he should resent his own excellence. Leaning in, he coldly explains the truth. Balin resembles him too much. He wanted a controllable heir, not a young rival who could one day challenge him. That, he reveals, is why Balin was never given the family name. Pulling his son into a twisted embrace, the Chancellor whispers that if they are truly alike, Balin must share his deepest desires. It's not a longing for honor, he says, but a pure, unyielding hunger for power. He promises that Balin doesn't need a noble title to get what he wants. All he has to do is listen, and he will gain the freedom to do things a nobleman never could. He will be able to operate outside the law, cutting down anyone who gets in their way. It's a dark path, but the Chancellor presents it as the only way for Balin to achieve his true potential. The Chancellor lays out his dark proposition. He explains that Balin will be a force of chaos, with the power to stir up conflict and ignite wars. In this new role, those who inherited the titles he was denied will learn to fear him. The Chancellor promises that even his own legitimate heir will eventually have to bow to Balin's unseen authority. He calls this secret power more desirable than any official position. Convinced by this twisted vision, Balin accepts his father's offer. He agrees to become the one who stands behind the veil. The scene then cuts to Balin already at work. He corners an official, the cold steel of his sword resting against the man's throat. Without a hint of emotion, Balin demands the transaction documents that link the warmongers to the imperial family, proving he is ready to burn the old system down to achieve his goals. The Chancellor's cold strategy is laid bare. He never saw his sons as family. They were merely tools for his ambition. Balin, the talented one, was shaped into a ruthless weapon meant to eliminate threats from the shadows. His other son was simply a public figurehead, a hollow shell to inherit the family name. The Chancellor knew Balin was effective, and he rewarded his son's dark deeds handsomely. In a private meeting, the Chancellor gives Balin his next assignment. He explains that this new target is extremely important and warns him to make no mistakes. Balin accepts the mission without question. His focus shifts to Elizabeth, whom he observes from the shadows of a crowded street. He had already fulfilled his father's twisted expectations by successfully instigating a war, proving his immense value. Having fully embraced his destructive purpose, he lets out a chilling laugh, completely consumed by the chaos he now wields. In the shadows, the Chancellor erupts in sinister laughter, praising his son for a job well done. For the ruthless Balin, this dark path is his only true proof of existence. Meanwhile, Elizabeth finds herself in a tense confrontation. She tries to reason with her captor, but he isn't interested in logic. He sneers that his actions are driven by pure disdain for nobles like her who walk so proudly in the light. He aggressively steps forward, grabbing her chin and holding a strange blade near her face. With the weapon poised, he demands to know the location of a seal. Suddenly, a small projectile zips through the air, cleanly knocking the dagger from his hand. Grand Duke Dave strides into view, with Crown Prince Eden right behind him. His eyes are cold with fury as he issues a single, dangerous command for the man to get away from Elizabeth.